Emperor of the Desert. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 376, Great Disrespect. At the same time, at the Tousaka residence, an elegant middle-aged man in a burgundy suit and a mustache, Tashiyomi muttered to himself. In front of him, in the center of the summoning circle carved with Mercury as the base, a golden servant was slowly opening his eyes. This is a young man, a slender and upright body, wearing golden armor that was polished to be as smooth as a mirror. That towering golden hair and handsome face, and those blood-red vertical pupils like snake eyes. Even though Tashiyomi seemed very calm on the surface, his heart was surging. Archer's oldest hero, King Gilgamesh, a half-god and half-human heroic spirit, the king who reigned over the ancient Mesopotamian city-state of Uruk. He may also be the earliest hero and the oldest king in history that can be traced back to today. We will definitely win this Holy Grail war. Next to Tashiyomi, the young man in black clothes similar to Catholic clothes glanced slightly to the side. Fuyuki City, Airport. A chartered plane stopped at the airport. A beautiful woman with silver hair was slowly walking down the stairs. Behind her, a handsome blonde girl in a black suit suddenly stopped and looked into the distance with a startled look. Her action caught the attention of the silver-haired beauty. "Saber, what's wrong? Are you airsick?" "No." Altria calmed down, but her face was still solemn. "Iris Veil, a difficult person has appeared." "Difficult person?" The silver-haired beauty, that is, Iris Veil, was slightly puzzled. "Servant?" "Yes." Altria nodded. "It could be another me." Her tone was a little puzzled and unbelievable, but there was no doubt that she was sure. "Another you?" Iris Veil also widened her eyes. "Can the same heroic spirit appear in the same place at the same time?" Taking a deep breath, she looked at the handsome girl seriously. "We need to inform Kiritsugu." Deep in the mountains, in the jungle, a giant man who was 2 meters tall stood in the center of the summoning circle, stretched out his hand, and scratched his head. "You are my master, right?" "Yes. Yes. I am. No. I am your. No. I am your summoner, Weber Velvet. Anyway, I am your summoner." Answering this incoherently, Weber looked at the tall and majestic man, and his heart couldn't help but be a little excited. Although he didn't like or even hated such a strong man, this was a great man who was famous throughout the world, conquering Greece, Egypt, and destroying the Persian Empire. Such a person would become his servant, as his familiar. This time, he would definitely be able to make the people in the clock tower recognize him. Weber clenched his fists. Then, well, the contract is established. "Boy, take me to the library quickly." In the words of this era, it's a library, a library. Before Weber could react, the thick arm, as thick as a pine tree trunk, grabbed the back of his collar and lifted him up like a kitten. "Books. Maps. Understand? If you are also a magician, there must be at least 1 or 2 libraries, right? Hurry up and lead the way." "Huh?" In an ordinary apartment, the smell of blood filled the whole house. A tall and thin man wearing an ancient style, a luxurious robe like a medieval noble, was standing in the room. The dark cloth was stained with a layer of deep red like blood, and a pair of unusually large and protruding eyes made people think of creatures like goldfish. Even if you ignore the man's strange appearance and behavior, as long as you think about the time and place, no one would think he is an ordinary person. Master, how many people should we kill next? Should we kill the elderly, children, or women? What kind of art should we create?" Beside him, a young man with orange hair and purple clothes was talking excitedly, and the blood-red lines on the back of his hand looked mysterious and bloody. Seeing that the tall and thin man did not reply, the orange-haired young man became quieter and whispered tentatively, Master. Without hearing the words of his master, the tall and thin man kept staring at the book in his hand and muttered to himself. In his hand, an evil book made of human skin was constantly emitting strange fluctuations, as if something was causing it to react. "Why did my ally Francois's magic book change like this? Who made it like this?" He raised his head, and his bulging eyeballs rolled around, as if he could see the flow of magic power, and turned his sight to the direction sensed by the human skin magic book in his hand. Row after row of modular warehouses that looked like stacked containers stretched out to the west of the seaside park, forming a warehouse street. Unmanned cranes were neatly arranged towards the dark sea. A row of lamp posts stood beside them. At this moment, a bronze-skinned woman dressed in cool clothes, Nito Chris, was holding the Eye of Horus given to her by the Qin people, and was looking for the location of Rot 2. However, at this moment, the magic power was surging, and Nito, who was summoned as a magician, felt it instantly. She immediately looked forward and was about to wave the simple black magic wand in her hand. The next moment, as she had sensed, a young man with a sturdy figure and wearing blue-green close-fitting leather armor appeared in the middle of the road. The long hair that was curled up was smoothed back. I don't know what kind of hairspray he used or if he hadn't washed it for a long time. However, looking at his handsome appearance and strong masculinity, he didn't look like a sloppy man, but a warrior. The black mole under his right eye, like a teardrop, was even more impressive. His deep eyes stared at Nito. Caster? The black mole under his right eye exuded a subtle magic, magnifying his handsome appearance and deep temperament several times, and subtly releasing attraction to the woman in front of him. Charm? Arrogant and rude. This is disrespectful. No matter how low her own achievements were, she was also a pharaoh who had endured the will of the pharaohs and gods of all generations. Moreover, she was able to avenge her husband's death, plot for several years, and kill countless ministers in one fell swoop. How could she tolerate the despicable villain using charm magic on her? Corpse mirror, dark mirror. Facing the sun god and the sun king with higher achievements, she would take the initiative to put herself in a low position. But the despicable person who dared to use charm magic on her must be punished. High-speed divine words. From the age of gods, the high-speed chanting that immediately executed the spell at the speed of a project was completed in an instant. The dark, deadly mirror of the underworld appeared above her head. Although he couldn't confirm the other party's identity, there was no doubt that this feeling related to death, like the feeling of the coming of death. Lancer, Diarmuid had already realized it. Hide? It was too late. Two steel guns wrapped in bandages, one long and one short, appeared in his hands. He must break through head-on. Diarmuid's eyes shone with a brilliant light. But at this moment, a fireball fell from the sky. Hey, little girl, this is my opponent. P.S. Nito is really big. You know what I'm talking about. Chapter 377 My big gun is thirsting. It was Qin Ren, a caster, who fell from the sky with a fireball like a meteorite. The wooden magic wand shaped like a sickle spun in the air, and the right hand protected by the silver armor and black sleeves drew a line in the sky from left to right. F, T, H, K, and the orange-red flames condensed into a row of runes, constructing magic. The next moment, these runes turned into surging flames, flowing and flying like water, gathering in the air into a crimson triangle, and then flew straight towards Diarmuid. The crimson flame triangle continued to expand during the flight. When it was about 3 meters away from Diarmuid, it had expanded from less than 20 centimeters to nearly 2 meters. Druid Diarmuid, who also came from Celtic mythology, although he could not use rune magic, he was sure to know it. The red spear held in his left hand pressed and raised, and the blood-colored arc left a long trajectory in the air as the tip of the spear swept up. Almost at the moment when the flames hit him, the red spear in his hand also passed over the flame triangle, and on the trajectory of the red spear, the flame released by Qin Ren was cut in half like a solid entity. At the same time, bang, accompanied by the explosion of magic power, his feet burst out with power. A loud bang sounded, and the ground was covered with cracks like tortoises. Diarmuid quickly retreated and instantly moved away from the original place. He glanced at the leather armor on his left wrist that was burned by the flames, and whispered in his heart, "Unfortunately, although the magic-breaking red rose can cut the flames formed by magic power, it can only cut it and cannot eliminate the completed magic. But it's okay." Under the attack of that person, Caster also retreated. Wait a minute, Caster? Because his energy was focused on the battle, Diarmuid had no time to think about other things. When he temporarily left the battle, he reacted, 2 casters. At this time, because he left early and did not see Qin Ren being summoned, he also fell into vigilance after being attacked by Qin Ren to stop the battle. The treasure that emerged at her call, the mirror of the underworld, still stayed above her head. However, at this moment, she heard the other party say, "You are wearing a really cool outfit." "Hey, the master said that this guy is my opponent." You continue to look for the rider. Although Qin Ren did not explain to Nito, he still explained to Qin Ren, "Showy clothes, healthy bronze skin, beautiful girl, rabbit ears, caster." These descriptions are undoubtedly the person that Nuado Bastard said. Although Nito has never seen Qin Ren, she is certainly not stupid. She immediately realized that the master he was referring to was Qin Ren, and the person in front of her was a companion like her. After being slightly stunned for half a second, she nodded and disappeared directly into a spirit body. "Although you probably won't answer, I still want to ask, why are there 2 casters?" Lancer Diarmuid asked in a low and loud voice. Who knows? Caster Qin Ren just smiled when he heard this. "Maybe one of us is a berserker or an assassin?" "Then you must be a berserker." Diarmuid seriously considered the other party's answer. "With such a fierce fighting spirit, you are more like a warrior than a caster." "If I were not a lancer, I would even think that you are the real lancer." As a warrior, Diarmuid made a judgment on the strange blue-haired young man in front of him. "You have good vision, don't you?" Qin Ren carried the magic wand in his hand on his shoulder, as if he was carrying a weapon. "I was tricked by my master and was summoned as a caster." "Oh, are you really a caster?" Hearing Qin Ren's self-exposure explanation, Diarmuid couldn't help but sigh. Speaking of his own legend, the more famous ones should be the 2 magic swords, but he was summoned as a lancer. Just when Diarmuid was about to talk more, a voice sounded in his ears. It was a message sent through the connection between the master and the servant. "Let's stop chatting here, Lancer, don't let the battle drag on, and quickly finish him off. You are allowed to use your treasure." Hearing this, Diarmuid's expression brightened, and his slightly raised posture showed that he had entered the battle state. "Understood, my master." He switched the yellow pistol in his right hand to his left hand, and the red long spear in his left hand to his right hand. The bandages that had been wrapped around most of the gun body as a cover disappeared. The magic power surrounding the 2 guns also proved his fighting spirit. "Oh, have you been ordered to start a war?" Qin Ren also put down the magic wand on his shoulder, and leaned the end of the wand on the ground. "That's right, caster, although I can't give my name, I will use the way of a knight to decide your victory." As soon as the voice fell, Diarmuid's magic power burst out from the soles of his feet, and the whole person flew towards Qin Ren. To deal with a caster, even the dumbest warriors know to do everything they can to close the distance. "Don't underestimate me." Qin Ren's eyes, like those of a fierce dog, glowed red. The moment his mouth curled up, red runes formed by magic power appeared one after another on the staff in his hand. Instantly, the entire staff was covered with blazing flames. Whoosh! The flaming staff swung twice in the air, and Qin Ren grasped the lower end. The flame-enchanted and strengthened staff swung out like a spear. Boom! Bang! The red spear and the flaming staff collided with each other, and the sound of the 2 solid treasures colliding and the sound of the flames on the staff exploding spread at the same time. At the same time, on the warehouse street, above the container, Kenneth Elmeloy Archibald was squinting his eyes, watching the collision between Lancer and Qin Ren through the magic of farsightedness. Although Lancer had the upper hand, he did not achieve an overwhelming result. "You know, his opponent was a caster!" What the chief knight of the Fianna? What the Irish hero? He can't even beat a caster. Although Kenneth still appeared calm on the surface, in his heart, he was already roaring. At the same time, on top of the Fuyuki Bridge, Weber Velvet was trembling and crying on the top of the bridge, crying to the giant sitting in front of him. "Rider, that's great." As a caster, he was able to tie with Lancer. "What the hell are you talking about? Is Lancer bad?" "Bad? No, that's not what I'm talking about." The burly man shook his head. "Lancer is a top-notch player, undoubtedly a good gunman, very powerful, but almost all of his gun tricks were seen through by caster. This caster either has powerful magic that can see through everything, or what? He's also a good gunman. How can a good gunman become a caster? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 378. Business. Mutual praise is the characteristic of fate. You have to taste it. The Qin people also watched with great interest as Qin Ren used various rune magic such as weapon enchantment, weapon strengthening, and body strengthening to fight Diarmuid as a melee mage. In Celtic mythology, the time difference between Qin Ren and Diarmuid was not far. In the real Celtic mythology, it is said that Qin Ren's mother Deityr was the daughter of the druid Cathbad. There is also a saying that Qin Ren's mother was the granddaughter of the god of love Angus and the fairy Caer, and Angus was the adoptive father of Diarmuid Odina. Does this mean that Diarmuid should be earlier than Qin Ren? However, it is not. God of love, can live for a long time. In terms of the time when the legend took place, it was the time of Qin Ren and other Ulster warriors, 1st to 2nd century AD. In terms of time, it was slightly earlier than the time of Finn McCool, Diarmuid and other heroes of the Fianna Knights, 3rd century AD. Moreover, if the Qin people remembered correctly, there seemed to be a saying that Diarmuid's idol was Qin Ren. But, well, myths and myths, there are all kinds of sayings. Although Qin Ren and Diarmuid were more than 100 years apart in time, both of them had a high status in Celtic mythology. However, Qin Ren, the son of light and the fierce dog of Qin Ren, had a higher status and a louder reputation. However, there was a difference in the combat ability of the two in mythology. Qin Ren, the bloodthirsty ferocious dog, was invincible in single combat, and had killed hundreds of kings of small countries and their armies, while Diarmuid had a record of killing 3,000 or 4,000 warriors. However, Qin Ren is now a caster, not a lancer, and Diarmuid is not a saber who uses the famous magic sword, but a lancer who uses the less famous magic spear. From the perspective of combat skills, now, there is no doubt that the gun skills of the brush have been basically seen through by Qin Ren, but after realizing this, the brush has continuously used tricks that break the routine. Obviously, the brush has also realized that Qin Ren is an expert in gun skills. As an additional attribute of the Lancer class, the magic resistance attribute highlights agility. Although it is not high, it is also a resistance. It has a great tactical advantage over magicians with low agility and poor melee combat. When facing him, although Qin Ren of the caster class has gained an advantage by relying on his understanding of gun skills, he has fallen into more disadvantages because of other factors and can only remain undefeated. Big dog, you feel like you are doomed to lose this time. Use the treasure. Big dog. Qin Ren laughed very happily, and he opened the connection between the master and the servant and laughed directly in Qin Ren's ear. You damn bastard. Next time I will definitely pierce your head with my gun. Even though he mistook Qin Ren for the Celtic god King Nuada, there was no respect in his tone. With both hands holding the long staff covered with blazing flames, he pushed and pushed like a spear, repelling the tricky long and short spears that Diarmuid stabbed at the same time. Runes flew out from his druid robe and formed a ring of fire round his body. Not good. The moment he saw the ring of fire, Diarmuid realized that something was wrong. The ring of fire, composed of runes with highly concentrated magic power, looked like it would explode at any time. No, it would explode now. The judgment of the crisis made Diarmuid choose to retreat immediately, but you need to pause for this magic. When his legs were tensed and he was accumulating strength to retreat, he stabbed out with the yellow short spear in his hand. At the moment when Qin Ren used magic, Diarmuid directly seized this rare opportunity and pierced Qin Ren's heart directly. The target injured by the deadly yellow rose cannot be healed. If the heart is pierced, it will be dead. However, when he pierced through Qin Ren's heart, Diarmuid did not feel that he had succeeded. On the contrary, his intuition told him that he had fallen into a trap. Sure enough, in the next moment, he saw the pierced caster body turned into dead branches and trees. The wooden tentacles like tree roots and vines crawled out of the caster's body, tied up his yellow rose short gun, and quickly spread to his left hand. The blood-red spear swung, and the magic-breaking red rose turned into a blood-red arc, tearing the vine tentacles condensed by magic power. And the moment Diarmuid pulled out the yellow rose, he immediately dodged and retreated. Boom! With a spread of spiderweb-like cracks, the ground cracked and sunken, and Diarmuid's figure turned into a phantom and disappeared on the spot. Almost at the moment he broke away, the body of the caster expanded at a very fast speed, and then, boom! Countless flames burst out from the caster's body, turning the entire warehouse street into a sea of fire. Even Kenneth, the Lancer Master, who was nearly 300 meters away from the battle site, had his pupils shrink. Fervor, sanguis, boiling, my blood, a chanting magic was activated, and at his feet, the mercury that radiated a metallic luster like a mirror stretched out its body quickly like a living thing, forming a silver shield in front of Kenneth to protect its master from damage. Although it can defend itself on its own, it must be activated now. At the critical moment, when the flames were almost approaching, the mercury shield barely protected his body. At the same time, he heard a loud laugh that resounded in the warehouse street. Don't underestimate the sage of the forest, ha 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 ha. And Kenneth also felt through the connection between the master and the servant that the Lancer was injured. It was not serious, which means that he escaped from the attack range in time. Damn it, it's useless. With a frown, Kenneth's magic power surged in his body, and with the movement of his palm waving, this simple healing magic of the project immediately took effect on Diarmuid's body. Thank you, my lord. Watching the wound on his left hand that was burned healed quickly, Diarmuid turned his gaze to the distance. In the center of the fire, stood a blue-haired man with his upper body naked. It was Caster. A substitute and a trap? Although he didn't know magic, Diarmuid quickly determined what had just happened. The opponent deliberately exposed a flaw to lure him into the trap. When he used the yellow rose of destruction to pierce the heart of Caster, the substitute trap would bind him, and then when the two of them were fighting just now, the magic that Caster secretly carved on the ground was activated. If he didn't use the red rose of destruction to break the bondage in one fell swoop, then his treasure yellow rose of destruction would be damaged or even destroyed. If he hesitated a little longer, he would even get himself involved. How insidious! Although the battle with the opponent was hearty, Diarmuid couldn't help but curse inwardly. But, at this time, the other party's voice sounded again. I was not sure before, but now, I am sure that the red gun is the magic gun Guy Dirg, red rose that breaks magic, that Angus gave you, right? That charming tear mole. In other words, you are the radiant look Diarmuid Odina. Hearing the other party's words, Diarmuid also laughed. A druid who is so familiar with gun skills and can use rune magic so skillfully, and has such a magic personality? If I am not mistaken, you are the mad dog of Cool and Cuchulain, right? After he said this, something unexpected happened. Hey, boy, at least I call you the radiant look. Shouldn't you call me son of light? Cuchulain seemed quite angry, and the baseball stick-like magic wand kept hitting his shoulder. P.S. Hockey stick, very vivid. It is quite similar to ice hockey sticks, golf sticks and the like. Chapter 379 FZ complains about the role. Hey, big dog, your status is just like that of a street thug, too low. Looking at Cuchulain's actions and words, Qin Ren's heart was full of complaints. But, there are so many people watching. Qin Ren sat on the throne, and his right hand holding his chin moved slightly, turning his head to the other side. The Tozaka family residence. Tozaka Tokiomi was sitting in his study, and the moonlight from the French window behind him dyed his wine-red dress with a layer of light white halo. Beside him, a man in a modified priest's outfit sitting differently. Archer rejected your proposal. Kairai, there is nothing we can do about it. Tozaka Tokiomi sighed, his posture still calm and elegant. The sudden incident at the port should have been felt by all the servants in Fuyuki City, right? Just now, he was going to carry out the plan that he had prepared with Kotamine Kairai, his disciple, let assassin pretend to invade the Tozaka residence, and then he let archer kill assassin to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. The characteristic of the assassin class is covert action, lacking a powerful noble phantasm to fight other servants head-on. In the Holy Grail War, assassin will lose an advantage at the beginning. All masters will know that assassin is still alive, and will be on guard against assassin. In addition, everyone knows the location of the Tasaka family, and someone may come directly. And if archer kills assassin, first, he could show off his muscles and make those who coveted the Tozaka family feel apprehensive and weigh their own strength. Second, he could make his disciple, Kotamin Kairai, eliminated legitimately, turn to secret operations, and give full play to assassin's abilities. The characteristics of assassin Husan summoned by his disciple, the characteristics that he would not die even if one of his personality clones was killed, were suitable for him to carry out this plan. Third, alas, Tozaka Tokiomi sighed. Now the plan has changed. This plan will be postponed or even impossible to execute. And the reason for all this is because of the battle at the port. The magic power was surging, and when the magic power surged, his vision became empty, and his vision was connected to another spare familiar outside the port. As expected of Castor's servant, he actually has such a powerful magic that makes modern magicians like Misai and envy. The first familiar he released was directly killed in the big explosion just now. I hope Archer won't join the battle easily. In addition to the skills possessed by the main heroic spirit, the servants will also add new skills according to their different jobs when they are summoned, and their jobs are determined. Assassin's breath blocking, casters forming a position, saber and riders riding, and the 3 knights anti-magic power all belong to this category of skills. Similarly, servants who have obtained the archer job will be given the special skill of acting alone. This skill allows the servants to act autonomously to a certain extent without the supply of magic power from the master. For example, when you want to use all your own magic power to perform a great magic, or when the master has a problem and cannot supply enough magic power in time, this ability is very important. But on the other hand, because of the existence of the skill of acting alone, it is much more difficult to completely control the servants. And Archer, the king of heroes, has a very high level of acting alone. Even without his magic supply, Archer can even continue to exist after the Holy Grail War ends. This is a very tricky thing for Tozaka Tokiomi. One command seal must be kept. Suppressing his worries, Tozaka Tokiomi continued to observe the battle. At the same time, to the west of the port, in the night sky, an invisible spirit entangled by magic was floating. A thought emerged from the invisible spirit entangled by magic: although they are just a group of bastards, they are barely worthy of attention. A servant was watching the battle between Castor Cuchulain and Lancer Diarmid, with a look of contempt for lower creatures. However, at this moment, he suddenly noticed something and turned his gaze to the direction of Fuiuki Bridge, where lightning flashed. Similarly, Lancer Wild Hunt King Artoria, who was summoned by Qin Ren, was also watching the battle in a spirit form. There is no doubt that if it comes to pure fighting skills, she is not as good as any of them. She is the King of Britain, although she is not afraid of fighting and has led warriors to fight on the battlefield many times. She is more familiar with fighting between armies in front of a large number of enemies rather than one-on-one duels. However, if she were to descend with the job of saber, she might be able to compete with them in combat skills. Both of them are outstanding spearmen. With pure sword skills, she cannot guarantee victory, and there is even a possibility of defeat, but it is better than herself as a lancer. But Diarmid of the Glorious Face and Cuchulain, the fierce dog of Quran? What exactly is the true form of the master? How can it be connected with so many heroic spirits? Shaking her head, her thoughts turned back to the two. Diarmid, who was summoned with the job of Lancer, is more famous for his deeds of holding a magic sword, and his sword skills are better than his spear skills. If I, as Saber, meet the other party, I might encounter the same situation, just like Diarmid was seen through by Cuchulain and countless spear moves, and my sword skills are suppressed by Diarmid. This battle, while she was thinking about it, the surging lightning from the southwest also attracted her attention. What is that? In the direction of the connection between the airport and the port, A white car was moving quickly. The blonde girl in a black suit and iris veil sitting in the passenger seat looked solemnly in the direction of the Fuiuki Bridge, where lightning exploded. On the Fuiuki Bridge, Weber shouted with a pale face, "What are you going to do again?" "What? Of course I have to go over. If I don't go over, the battle will end." While Castor was fighting with Lancer, he kept making moves around and turned the port into his own territory. Territory? You mean the port has become Castor's position and a workshop? How is that possible? Weber's eyes widened. According to the concept of modern magicians, it would take at least several hours to build a simple workshop. Now it's less than 10 minutes before that Castor appears. Workshop, is that what the magician said? The tall rider twisted his wrist, and the dagger that had been unsheathed was continuously releasing lightning. Anyway, it's like this, if we don't go over, Lancer will be destroyed. Why should we go over? Shouldn't we just wait until they finish fighting and then go over? We can reap the benefits. However, when he finished saying this, a fierce aura burst out from Ryder's body. What are you talking about, idiot? Weber was so scared that he almost fell off the bridge, and he couldn't help but tremble in fear. Idiot. I almost fell, but Ryder still talked to himself. The opportunity to fight with heroes from different eras is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They are all exciting warriors. How can we miss this opportunity? Let's go, boy. We can't let such warriors die like this. The short sword in his hand was raised high to the sky, and the surging lightning blasted into the sky. Then, amid the blue roar of the lightning, the sound of cows mooing and wheels rolling came out from the dark clouds. Weber saw the ox cart that frightened him again. If we don't let them die, what will happen to them? Weber's trembling voice was drowned in the thunder. Chapter 380. The Emperor is still the Emperor. Everyone's attention was attracted by the classical double-rider chariot wrapped in lightning. The two black bulls with well-developed muscles and strong and muscular bodies were stepping on the sky, and lightning intertwined under their feet. The double-rider chariot pulled by two thunder bulls, which were called divine beasts, was extremely gorgeous. Every time the bull's hooves stepped, a blue-purple thunderstorm would bloom, lightning would draw spider-web-like traces, and the thunderous sound produced by the rapid heating of the air shook the entire sky, as if the god of thunder had descended. There was no doubt that this was a treasure. Cuchulainn and Diarmuid, as well as Diarmuid's master Kenneth, made a judgment in their hearts. Diarmuid's spear, which was originally pointed at Cuchulainn, retracted and stuck to his arm, ready to guard against attacks at any time. The runes surrounding Cuchulainn also slightly changed their trajectory, forming a defense around him. For the two, this suddenly appearing chariot was a greater threat. The two turned their eyes to the chariot wrapped in lightning almost synchronously. The chariot, which was caught in the thunder, circled over the heads of the two men and then landed on the ground. After leaving two gullies that smelled of burning, the chariot stopped in the middle of Cuchulainn and Diarmuid, who were standing opposite each other 50 meters away. Both sides put down their weapons. You are now in front of this king. The moment the last ray of lightning dissipated, Diarmuid and Cuchulainn also saw the two people on the chariot clearly. Needless to say, the shivering little man did not look like a servant at all. He should be the master. The strong man who spoke was the owner of this chariot. The majestic spirit and pressure. There is no doubt that this person may be a heroic spirit with the status of the god of thunder. Cuchulainn and Diarmuid, who came from Celtic mythology, made this judgment at the first time. But, the king of conquerors, my name is Iskander, and I have won the seat of rider in this Holy Grail war and appeared in the world. Diarmuid and Cuchulainn were both stunned. Weber was also shocked and speechless. In the Holy Grail war, the servants will fight each other, as heroic spirits, while gaining great power due to legends. They will also have various weaknesses due to legends. Even if there are no direct weaknesses, they can still study countermeasures against the opponent through legends. Exposing the real name is equivalent to falling into a disadvantage. There is no doubt about this. But now, this strong man, no, this king of conquerors, actually exposed his real name? Is it a deception, or is it heroic and confident? Diarmuid couldn't help but have doubts in his heart. Oh, king of conquerors Iskander, the Alexander the Great? Cuchulainn scratched his back with his druid wand and looked at the strong man. He looks quite tall, right? As heroic spirits, free from the constraints of time. Qin Ren and Diarmuid also have knowledge and memories that are not limited to the times. Although he did not have time to take care of the land after the conquest, and the territory collapsed immediately after his death, there is no doubt that this Alexander the Great conquered a large area of land. But Qin Ren had no respect for the king. There were hundreds of kings who died in his hands. Alexander the Great was just a king who was a few sizes bigger. Regarding Iskander's act of revealing his real name, he only had one thought: this guy is quite tall, and it's okay if you want to tell me your real name, as long as you are happy. The voice of the Qin people rang in his ears. Akatrum, you are quite to my taste. Qin Ren's mouth curled up a smile from the heart. Akatrum is the Celtic nickname for the god King Nuada. Qin Ren put the long staff in his hand on the ground and said, Ulster, the Hound of Cullen, Satanda. The Qin people on the side couldn't help but smile when they heard his self-introduction. Ulster is the name of Qin Ren's country. Now, it is a province in Ireland, England, and Satanda is Qin Ren's original name. Speaking of this, the Qin people couldn't help but sigh. In the world of God-Killer, Marquis Vauban was not originally called Vauban. The surname Vauban was the name of the mastiff raised by the Marquis in the territory he attacked, so his surname was also decided to be Vauban. If I am not mistaken, the illusion used by the author of God-Killer is the illusion of Qin Ren. Qin Ren accidentally killed the beloved hound of the blacksmith Qin, and then decided to change his name to Qin Ren, which means Qin's mastiff, to replace the hound to protect the blacksmith Qin. His nickname is exactly the same as his name. The Qin people were able to understand the meaning of the words through paraphrase. However, in the ears of Diarmuid and Iskander, it was Ulster, Qin Ren Satanda. Hearing Qin Ren's self-introduction, the emperor was obviously stunned, and then remembered something. Oh, the son of the sun god? I didn't expect you to be a caster. In different eras, there are different names for famous people. For the name Qin Ren, the first impression of most Celtic warriors is the Knight of Red Branches and the fierce dog of Cullen. Celtic civilians or poets would call him the Son of Light. As for the Greek emperor, he has not been exposed to Celtic mythology for a long time. Although he has memories related to Celtic mythology, he is just like everyone else, browsing from top to bottom like browsing information. The son of the sun god, the god of light, Luger, and Iskander and Qin Ren reported their names one after another, and Diarmuid was about to report his name. As for concealment, Qin Ren has already guessed his identity, so it shouldn't matter, right? With this thought in mind, Diarmuid was also ready to give his name, but, shut up, Lancer, you don't have to tell me your real name. Yes, my lord. Diarmuid accepted the call of the Holy Grail only for the purpose of serving a lord faithfully, so he chose to obey Kenneth's order. After hesitating for a moment, he shut up. Although Qin Ren and the emperor noticed his actions at this time, they did not have any dissatisfaction with his action of concealing his real name. Moreover, the emperor took a deep breath, and with his hands open, a heroic but kind voice sounded, "So, caster, and lancer over there, are you willing to join my army? If so, I will treat you as my close friends and share the joy of conquering the world with you." He was serious. Diarmuid looked at the expressions on the others' faces and came to this answer. Then, he shook his head helplessly. "Rider, I cannot accept your proposal. The only one who can let me offer the Holy Grail is the new lord who I will make a contract with in this life." And Qin Ren also laughed. "Ha ha ha, you are really a funny guy." After the laughter died down, Qin Ren also answered seriously, "I don't care about the Holy Grail. If you want it, I can give it to you. However, you have to beat me, and you have to ask my master. The treatment is negotiable." And when he said this, the keen man, who was laughing in his heart, "The emperor is still the same emperor," took a deep breath, and responded to Sea Dog, "I'm not yours." P.S. Does it feel like copying the original plot like this is a bit too watery? Chapter 381 Galio, use W quickly. While Qin Ren and Sea Dog were communicating in a friendly manner, Mordred, who was beside Qin Ren, became a little impatient. "Hey, master, it's time for me to come out." She was a little agitated, as if her hands were itching. What an impatient kid. Qin Ren was speechless. Mordred and he were not very compatible. Qin Ren could sense this. Sure enough, let Lian Ji Li be your master. The father-daughter combination has a higher compatibility. Although he didn't like Fa very much, he still liked some combinations in it, such as the father-daughter combination of Lian Ji Li and Mordred. He still liked the way the two got along, but unfortunately, his personality was completely different from that of Lian Ji Li. His sight fell on Mordred, who was constantly swinging a long sword in his hand. Although she was short and looked a little funny in this heavy armor, Qin Ren would not underestimate her strength. Then, he nodded, if you want to join the battle, go and join the battle. It's up to you whether you want to reveal your real name or not. Qin Ren just wanted to watch the show, and he was completely laissez-faire about the actions of these servants. Oh, Qin Ren's casualness also made Mordred's momentum deflate. Then I'll go over. For some reason, facing Qin Ren's attitude, she always felt that she couldn't use her strength, and she felt that she was holding back her strength but hitting nothing. The flesh and blood condensed by magic power dissipated, and her body turned into a pure spirit. Mordred's figure quickly left Qin Ren's sight. Watching the spirit body containing huge magic power quickly disappear from his sight, Qin Ren's sight shifted to Jingmai next to him. Aren't you going to play? Jingmai tilted her head. Who are you going to kill? So in your consciousness, killing people is just playing? Although her worldview gradually became evil, Qin Ren still knew what normal people's worldview was like. It was obvious that Jing Xi's worldview had been distorted, but that was right. After all, the assassins were a terrorist organization. It was a mistake to expect the leader of the assassins to have normal worldviews. When the two were alone, Qin Ren had time to carefully look at the girl. Inexplicably, a feeling of seductive and tempting emerged in Qin Ren's mind. Although it was very exposed, she was clearly dressed properly, but it gave people a hazy feeling that she was actually naked. Charm. Qin Ren was not unfamiliar with this feeling. He had felt it countless times from 32. Moreover, compared to 32, who possessed the power of the lustful demon queen Asmodeus, Jing Xi's charm was nothing compared to that deadly charm. Qin Ren scratched his chin, and his gentlemanly eyes swept across her exposed shoulders and neck, as well as her waist and thighs, and swept across the inch by inch of her delicate brown skin. Sure enough, this kind of body shape still doesn't arouse the slightest interest. Jingmi naturally noticed Qin Ren's blatant scrutiny, and then, Master, do you want to try it? She opened her hands. Try my body. When she spoke, there was no expression on her face. It was as if she was just talking about some utensils on the roadside, not her own body. Wow, Jingmi, you are too open-minded. Qin Ren just said this in his mind, but he remembered something else. That is Jingmi's setting. As an assassin, she has a very unique physique. Her body is not invaded by all the poisons in the world, and it is also a huge poison block. Not only her nails, but even her skin and body fluids are highly poisonous, which can quietly take the lives of kings, nobles and generals who come into contact with her. As an assassin, her targets are mostly men, and her way of action is basically to establish a lover and fiancé relationship with the assassination target, and then kill the lover who sleeps with her by poisoning. In other words, for her, she completely regards her body as a tool. However, because of the poison in her body, no one would survive a simple touch, let alone close contact. It seems that Jingmai has been looking for someone who can survive after being touched by her. Yes, it's me, Jingmai. I am your true love, Qin Ren said in his heart. However, in fact, Qin Ren was just curious. After absorbing Isis, he gained the ability to be immune to and release poisons at the level of God's poison. He now wants to try whether Jingmai's poison can cause harm to himself. Jingmai, come here and release your full strength on me. Just as Qin Ren was preparing for the experiment, a roar came from the port. Hey, there are others hiding in the dark and peeking, the heroic spirits summoned by the Holy Grail. Gather here now. The coward who is afraid to show his face, he will accept the contempt of the conqueror King Iskander. Qin Ren couldn't help but be a little stunned. Great Emperor, you still taunted? But now it's fun. Lar is building a position and a temple. I wonder if he will go over immediately. However, I'd better say it first. Qin Ren directly sent a message to the servants he summoned. You can go out if you want, you can do it at will. Continue to look for the servants suspected of Castor who just left. Use mechanical means, not magic, to avoid counter-reconnaissance. At the edge of the port, Emiya Kiritsugu, who was holding a weapon and approaching the port, did not continue to approach because he was afraid of the fire released by Castor. Instead, he contacted Hisalmia by phone. After the Emperor's voice sounded, Kiritsugu was extremely stunned. The thinking circuit of the Conqueror King was far beyond Kiritsugu's understanding. He wanted to sigh but couldn't. Has the world almost been conquered by such an idiot? Hisalmia on the other end was silent. The Tanzaka family, the Fuiuki Church. This is not good. Indeed, it is not good. Tanzaka Tokiomi and Kotami Kairai were silent. This is the lowest level of provocation, and one of the servants will definitely take the bait. Port. Kuchulain could no longer conceal the smile on his face when he heard the Emperor shout that, "Rider, you are so funny." Diarmid couldn't help but laugh and shook his head. He also felt that his brain could not keep up with the other party's thinking circuit. Any servant who values reputation will not ignore Rider's words. Less than 2 seconds after the last echo of the Emperor's roar dissipated in the port, a golden light fell on the lamppost on the side of the road. The magic power wrapped around the spirit and turned into a physical body. A blond young man wearing dazzling, sparkling golden armor. P.S. Actually, it should be said that the sword demon used the voice actor of the sword demon in the Japanese version of LOL is the voice actor of the Emperor. Chapter 382, The Glorious Composite Grand Temple. I didn't expect that there would be such a shameless person who would ignore my existence and call himself the king. The golden heroic spirit sneered in displeasure the first sentence he said, and his snake-like red eyes looked down with disdain at the 3 servants who were confronting each other below. Especially Rider Iskander who was standing on the chariot. Rider did not expect that there would be an opponent who was more aggressive than himself. He seemed a little surprised and scratched his chin in confusion. This is really embarrassing. I, Iskander, am the king of conquerors known to the world. Idiot. I am the only true king in the world. The others are just bastards. You keep saying bastards all day long, and it seems that you, a half-god half-human, are also a bastard. The Qin people who were watching from the side muttered in their hearts. Unlike the Qin people who secretly complained, Iskander scratched his neck helplessly, and then the burly man clapped his hands. Since we have come to this point, let's report our names first. If you are also the king of a country, you should not be afraid to say your own reputation, right? As long as you judge according to common sense, anyone will think that what the Emperor said should be more reasonable. If you think you are more awesome, report your name and let everyone compete. However, it is obvious that this golden heroic spirit has a bad temper. You have the honor to meet me, but you dare to say that you don't know my face. Such a fool has no right to live in this world. As soon as the voice fell, around the other party, the magic power was stirred, and ripples like water waves spread in the air, and the golden light suddenly emerged. In this mirage-like scene, the next moment, a number of gorgeous swords, spears, short axes, sickles and countless other different weapons emerged as if floating out of the water, covering a large area of the sky. These were not ordinary weapons. Everyone present could feel that the weapons were wrapped in a strong magic that was difficult to conceal. Obviously, these weapons were not ordinary things, but treasures. Archer, Hero King Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh, the most boastful king of Type Moon. Qin Ren also observed through a wide field of vision, but at this moment, Qin Ren found that the berserker beside him, Darius III, had moved. It seemed that he had reacted to Gilgamesh's activation of the treasure. Qin Ren was slightly confused. However, when his eyes once again came to the golden ripple light wall behind Gilgamesh, he also remembered one thing: Gilgamesh's treasure, the treasure of the king, Gate of Babylon, that is, the Gate of Babylon. In short, it is a portable warehouse, which is not a rare setting. However, in the world of fate, as the author of The Flash, Mushroom, gave this Lord of Ruck an extremely awesome setting. In Jin Shanshan's treasure house, there are prototypes of all the treasures in the world. No matter whether Jin Shanshan knows it or not, as long as it meets the concepts of treasure, except for a few. They are basically collected in the treasure house. However, as a desert fanatic, when Qin Ren studies the Middle East, he will naturally study the history of the Mesopotamian region. Babylon. The word itself means the gate of God. It means that Babylon is a reward from heaven and a gate connecting to heaven. He once complained about the gate of Babylon in Fate. After all, the word Babylon itself has the meaning of door. After adding gate, the word becomes gate of God. Okay, double doors. Jin Shanshan owns the gate of Babylon, and Qin Ren has no objection to this. The king who owns Babylon. There is nothing to say, but he owns the prototypes of all the treasures in the world. Okay, you say that he owns the prototypes of all the treasures in the West Asia region, which is more or less reasonable. The whole world? The origin of the Mesopotamian world? Okay, Type Moon's house rules are awesome. Let's not talk about this. There is another one. That is, the Babylon region was not only owned by Jin Shanshan, and, to be precise, the area occupied by the city-state of Uruk is just a small corner of the entire Babylon region. And there are many kings who occupied the Babylon region and whose territories are much larger than the city of Uruk. There are even more kings who truly occupied the entire Babylon region. As the king of Persia, Darius III is also one of the kings who occupied the Babylon region. And, if Qin Ren remembered correctly, the background of Darius III's Fate world clearly mentioned the Gate of Babylon. It's just that he didn't remember it clearly. It seems that Darius III opened this treasure house and opened the Gate of Babylon during his lifetime. Qin Ren's sight moved to Darius III, who he had ignored before and was now making some unusual moves. Chief, are you going to get something from the golden treasure house? But unfortunately, Darius, who was in the mad class, had no reason to communicate at all. He had gone completely mad and lost all reason. The communication failed, and Qin Ren didn't think much about it. Compared to this, what happened next was more exciting. Black Gun Dai and Dai Mao have already run into each other. No matter which side first, you can't help it. Qin Ren's sight moved to the sky, where a dazzling light appeared. Gilgamesh, who was about to launch an attack, Iskander, who was about to fight, and Cuchulainn and Diarmid, who were watching, also turned their sights to the sky. In the sky above the sea, there, a very magnificent, solemn, huge temple emitting thousands of feet of light was floating in the sky. And it was not a temple. Several temples overlapped, forming a magnificent, super large temple complex, as if the entire starry sky had fallen into the sea. If we assume that the places we saw were not illusions but real objects, the total length would be more than several kilometers. It was like a mirage. The brilliant light illuminated the sky like sunlight, making people feel as if they were in the daytime. The rippling light wall that emerged from the opening of Gilgamesh's Babylon gate was nothing compared to the huge complex temple. Everyone was distracted. Even Cuchulainn, who lived in the Age of Gods, couldn't help but marvel at the magnificent scene of countless temples overlapping. What's more, he was summoned as a caster. He turned his eyes to the ground, to the magic workshop he had made temporarily when fighting Diarmid. Cuchulainn was quite confident in the workshop he had built. As long as he spent more time, he could even make a gate to the Kingdom of Shadows. In front of that huge and complex temple, it is a complete joke. It is no longer the level of a workshop, but a temple of the Age of Gods. A real temple. P.S. I have really researched the part about the Gate of Babylon, and found a lot of information for comparison. The easiest way is to go to Baidu and search for the entry of Chief Darius III, the entry of Fate. It is written in the Bond outfit that he opened the Gate of Babylon. I don't know if there is any treasure house in the real history of Darius III. After all, I am just a keyboard historian and keyboard mythologist, not a real historian or mythologist. Chapter 383, Hot Sand Sphinx. Without a doubt, it was a treasure belonging to a certain servant. Then, when all the servants, including Gilgamesh, turned their eyes to the temple complex that looked like a mirage and like the reflection of stars floating in the sea and sky, they also discovered that there was a huge object from the temple complex, flying towards them at an alarming speed. Reflexively, Iskander grabbed the back of Weber's collar, moved him behind him, and blocked his body in front of him. At the same time, the slightly downward movement undoubtedly entered a defensive position. He did not consider the first move to meet the attack, but gave priority to protecting Weber. In his piercing eyes, there was a faint flash of lightning, capturing the figure that was rushing at high speed. The same thing happened to Diarmid. The tips of the two guns in his hands, one long and one short, were slightly tilted, keeping them in a position where they could change direction at any time. Qin Ren had subconsciously tightened his grip on the druid staff. The magic power that flowed from his body into the staff had already echoed with the workshop position he had just established, and could amplify his magic at any time. However, at this time, he seemed to remember something, and couldn't help but mutter in his heart, "Is it the other servants summoned by that bastard Nuada? How am I a bastard again? Qin Ren was confused, and said, "Big Dog, don't always put a hat on my head." But it seems that what Big Dog said is right. In Qin Ren's eyes, which are like thousands of chains intertwined and chaotic and evil, this so-called high speed is not worth mentioning at all. Human face, lion body, a human head with a headdress full of ancient Egyptian-style characteristics, and a lion body with gorgeous decorations, a terrifying beast full of oppression. Sphinx. Qin Ren can be said to be very familiar with the Sphinx. When he made 32, the materials he used included the Sphinx representing anger in the P5 world. When fighting against the sons of Horus and the 4 sons of Canopus in the God Slayer world, the other party summoned several sphinxes. "I feel a little itchy. Lend me your sphinx." Chains emerged from Qin Ren's body and flew towards the sphinx. Jingmai stared at this scene with wide eyes. The great composite temple of glory, Ramesses II, who was sitting on the throne of the pharaoh, looked at Nitocris beside him. "Don't worry, just send the hot sand sphinx over." Not long ago, he was preparing to summon the treasure, the great composite temple of glory, Ramessium Tentiris, the treasure that materialized his glory in the form of a treasure. The huge alien composite temple body formed by the fusion of various temples and temples he built during his lifetime, the great temple of Dentra, the great temple of Karnak, the great temple of Abu Simbel, etc., formed a huge alien space independent of the world. The magician called it the inherent barrier. However, he did not open it for a short time, but for a long time. If it was opened for a short time, it would open directly without any preparation and take the enemy into the Grand Temple of Glory. What he wanted to do was to make the Grand Temple of Glory descend for a long time. To do this, he needed a certain amount of preparation time. However, he did not expect that the brown-skinned girl who was summoned by the unknown master together with him was actually the pharaoh Nitocris of the 6th dynasty. Although he felt that he was the greatest pharaoh, he still had good intentions for this female pharaoh who came earlier than him and had a humble attitude. Moreover, the other party descended as a caster and had the ability to create a high-level position. At his suggestion, the other party helped, and now the Grand Temple of Glory has been almost completely built. Even if there is no achievement, and even the Eternal Kingdom cannot be reached, there is no doubt that the other party is also the incarnation of God, the favorite of Horus, the favorite of Osiris, the ancient queen of the sky. At this moment, Nitocris was a little entangled. That Lord Iskander, although not as great as you, is also a pharaoh with great achievements. Will it be okay to send only the Sphinx? Ramesses II put on a smile on his handsome face and nodded gently. "Okay, let the hot sand Sphinx send the invitation. When the temple is built, we will hold a banquet." But at this moment, his eyes widened, and a trace of anger and doubt flashed in his golden eyes. The hot sand Sphinx is out of control. It's him. When the hot sand Sphinx lost control, he had already noticed what was going on. The master who seemed to be a god but had no real identity. Ally. Nito also immediately understood who Ramesses II was talking about. Yeah. Ramesses II's face became a little heavy. What exactly does he want to do? Port. In less than 2 seconds, the shadow that was originally just in the distance of everyone's sight had already arrived in front of everyone, wrapped in the scorching storm, and landed in front of everyone. The body, which was larger than a heavy truck, fell to the ground. However, It did not cause any impact on the ground. The giant beast that smashed Newton's coffin fell with a sacred and graceful movement. There was no loud bang, and no ground collapse, only a slightly hot, sacred breeze spread out. At most, it could only lift the girl's skirt. Then, the giant beast that made people feel sacred, looked down at the people present with eyes that were like dead things without any brilliance. Whether it was Iskander, Diarmid, Cuchulain, or Gilgamesh, Sphinx, Iskander said the name of the giant beast. It was something that could not set foot on the earth in this modern era, a creature that existed in the age of gods, a monster that was praised by people in ancient Greece and Babylonia, a composite beast with a human head and a lion body, a legendary giant beast that was feared for its violent flames and wind, also known as the Father of Terror, a Baul. This is really an incredible thing, Iskander muttered to himself. In his time, the Sphinx was also a fantasy creature with countless legends in the Mediterranean to West Asia, and it was a more powerful existence than his thunderbolt that pulled the chariot. Kenneth, who was watching from the side, had a different idea. If he was an immature magician, he might have the idea of summoning such a terrifying monster, but fundamentally, it is completely wrong to call this thing a monster. An existence that lives in legends. An existence that sleeps in fantasy. An existence that exists in myths, fantasy species, fantasy beasts, existences that only exist and are praised in ancient legends. These existences that are not known life and are transformed into forms by mystery themselves are divided into levels such as monsters, fantasy beasts, and divine beasts. This is a divine beast. Like the dragon species, it is undoubtedly a fantasy sacred beast of the highest level. Similarly, Gilgamesh, who has become a heroic spirit and has knowledge that is not limited to the times, naturally knows about the Sphinx. But, look down on me. Gilgamesh has a swollen pride and is easily angered. How could he bear to be looked down upon by this beast? How dare you, a lowly beast, look down upon me? Chapter 384 Suggestions for enriching your vocabulary. Bastard! Gilgamesh's angry and murderous voice rang out. Behind him, the gate of Babylon expanded again. The ripple-light wall, which was only a dozen meters in diameter, instantly expanded to more than 30 meters. Hundreds and thousands of weapons filled with the ore of treasures came out of the gate of Babylon and aimed at the body of the Sphinx. Bastard, aren't you also a bastard? According to the legend, Gilgamesh's mother was the goddess Ninxum, and his father was also a hybrid of a human and a god. In simple terms, he was 1/3 human and 2/3 god. No, should it be called 3/4? The one who had the least right to call others bastards was himself. The Sphinx, or Qin Ren, did not show any weakness and started to spray Jin Shan Shan. However, it was just right. Although it was just a mirror image eroded by his power, its strength was much worse than the original body, but it didn't matter. The servants who descended were not the original body, and he didn't want to bully the weak, so he would use this mirror Sphinx to fight you. Qin Ren also controlled the mirror Sphinx and roared. The calm and indifferent face suddenly became distorted. As the roar sounded, he showed an expression like a beast and roared at Gilgamesh. Bastard, today is your death. Gilgamesh's burning red snake eyes flashed with anger, but his expression was extremely calm. At his command, countless weapons and treasures that emerged from the gate of Babylon shot towards the Sphinx. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The treasures fired at a very fast speed, like cannonballs, tore the air and left countless white ripples in the air. In an instant, nearly 100 treasures shot towards the Sphinx controlled by Qin Ren. Countless treasures shot like raindrops. Facing the attack, Qin Ren roared, and the surging magic power gathered in his mouth. Wang Zu's flash. The dazzling beam of light formed by pure magic power shot out from the mouth of the Sphinx, like a spear sweeping over. Boom, boom, boom. The heart-pounding rumble shook the atmosphere. The flash of the explosion almost swept away the darkness, illuminating the night sky, and the smoke from the explosion instantly filled the air. I missed one. The Qin man raised his lion claw and slapped down an axe-like treasure that came out of the smoke. Boom boom boom. In addition to these, there were several remaining weapons of the treasure level that fell on the ground, smashing the ground into large holes. The road surface was destroyed as if it had been carpet bombed by a bomber. Who would believe that weapons such as throwing swords alone would have such a powerful destructive power? But, the beam of light gushing out of the mouth of the Sphinx also tore half of the port. A long gully with a depth of several meters to tens of meters stretched hundreds of meters from east to west. "What's wrong, bastard? Do you want to come again?" The Qin man's huge lion claw slapped a spear-like treasure at his feet away. The noble phantasm flew out like a boomerang, passing under Gilgamesh's feet and cutting off the lamppost of the street lamp. You can't be timid when dealing with someone with a dirty mouth. You have to fight bad breath with bad breath. The lamppost, broken into 2 sections, fell to the ground with a loud noise. Gilgamesh had dodged before the lamppost broke, and landed on the ground as if nothing had happened. On the side, the others were not idle either. While spending some effort to avoid the aftermath of the battle, they were also commenting on the battle between Qin Ren and Jin Shanshan. Is that the noble phantasm of that Jin Shanshan guy? It can launch weapons. Iskandar's eyes were fixed on the large area of golden light ripples behind Gilgamesh. And, those are undoubtedly noble phantasms. Diarmid looked at the countless weapons that fell to the ground and couldn't help but be a little dumbfounded. All the weapons were polished to be as bright as mirrors, and they also contained powerful magic. They were no less inferior to his own yellow rose and red rose. They were all real noble phantasms, without exception. But, this is impossible. Qin Ren resisted the urge to pick up a spear, and waved the druid staff with an itchy hand, tapping his shoulder. Although the heroic spirit has more than one noble phantasm, there are also heroic spirits with 3, 4, 5 or 6 noble phantasms. But this number, dozens, hundreds of noble phantasms, this number is too exaggerated. It seems that he can't release his true name, and he just throws these noble phantasms like projectiles. He doesn't use weapons. As a warrior, Diarmid felt a little distressed that so many powerful weapons were used in this way, but because of this, he came to the conclusion that the golden heroic spirit is not a warrior who cherishes weapons at all. Legend of a collector? Qin Ren scratched his head. And a king. Iskandar naturally did not forget what the other party said when he appeared. A famous king in history? Or a collector? Weber also began to rack his brains to think about the characters in his memory that fit these labels. However, Iskandar's attention was more focused on the Sphinx at this time. There is no doubt that this Sphinx is not a servant. Although it may be a berserker, this Sphinx flew over from the temples floating in the sky. Obviously, this Sphinx, like his flying hoof Thunderbull, is a fantasy beast summoned by a treasure, and the creature that can summon the Sphinx, and the temples with a pyramid-like outline, are undoubtedly the heroic servants from Egypt. At this time, the battle between Gilgamesh and Qin Ren started again. However, this time, it was Qin Ren who launched the attack. Qin Ren set himself the restriction of only using up the power in the mirror Sphinx's body at most. And the flash of Wang Zhu just now, although it looks very powerful, actually consumes almost 40% of the magic power of this body. At most, there can only be 2 more shots. But, it's fun to fire for a while, and it's fun to keep firing. Qin Ren chose to gather magic power again without hesitation, and the surging power gathered into a black and white magic ball, facing the huge magic power that was so condensed that it even distorted the surrounding light. No matter how stupid Gilgamesh was or how proud he was, he didn't think he could resist it with his body. The next moment, golden ripples appeared in front of him, and several shields of different shapes suddenly appeared in front of him. Boom! The terrifying beam of light shot out instantly and hit the shield condensed in front of Gilgamesh. Crack! Boom! The first shield was shattered by the beam of light, but it was precisely because of this that the second shield firmly blocked the beam of light. Oh my god! There are prototypes of all the treasures. This is too shameless. Qin Ren's mouth twitched. However, just when Qin Ren was about to raise his lion claws to fight with Jin Shanshan because his magic power was exhausted, he saw the expression on Jin Shanshan's face become distorted. And then, relying on your advice, you want me to retreat? You are quite courageous, Tokiomi. Gilgamesh's face still had anger. He stared at the Sphinx. You have saved your life, bastard. After that, he turned his eyes to the others. You bastards, Eliminate the trash before we meet next time. I only want to see real heroes. After that, he dematerialized and disappeared on the spot. Qin Ren watched the invisible soul wrapped in magic power go away, and couldn't help but curl his lips. Besides bastard, do you know any other words? Didn't you graduate from elementary school or something? The aunties on the street have a richer vocabulary than you. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 385 Quilt vs. Black Gun. The short and fierce battle between the Mirror Sphinx controlled by the Qin people and Gilgamesh also brought a great shock to the crowd watching. Whether it was the golden light of Gilgamesh's Gate of Babylon that covered the sky, or the countless treasures pouring out of the treasure house, or the destructive power of the Mirror Sphinx spewing black and white beams to tear the earth, all the servants present or watching had a certain estimate of the strength of Gilgamesh and the Mirror Sphinx. Then, the Qin people turned their attention to Iskander and Diarmid. If you are interested, come to the temple. After that, the Qin people controlled the Mirror Sphinx to flap its wings and fly away from the scene. Sphinx? It's really shocking. Iskander looked at the Sphinx disappearing in the sky, and his eyes swept across the temples on the sea. It seems that he is also a famous king. Well, not bad. Such a place is quite suitable for holding a banquet. Invite? He was seriously thinking about whether to go to the banquet now. However, his sight fell on the motionless, collapsed Waver on the chariot beside him. He reached out and lifted Waver up like a chicken. Hey, kid, you are too disappointing, aren't you? You fainted like this when he was dodging the beam attack of the Sphinx just now. Because his movements were too violent, he did not have the means to protect others, and Waver, who was hit by the aftermath, fainted. In the current situation, it was obvious that even if he wanted to go now, it was not a good time to attend the banquet. Then, Caster and Lancer, let's stop here today. He needed to let Waver find a place to rest, otherwise his thin-skinned and tender little master might not be able to hold on. Magicians are really too fragile. The Emperor, who had never come into contact with magicians, labeled the magicians in his mind as fragile, and Diarmid also received the order from his master Kenneth to retreat, rest, and organize intelligence. As for Kuchulain, his sight was still wandering on the ground of the warehouse street. There is not a single one left. He wanted to pick up a spear. Moreover, the lion-bodied beast just now, I don't know if it was an illusion. He seemed to sense the breath of Nuada. The two planned to retreat. Although he felt that he had not had enough fun, he did not intend to force a fight. However, at this moment, the sight of the three was attracted by another situation. Southwest of Fuyuki City, on the road from the airport to the port, two servants stood face to face, or one stood and the other sat. One was a blonde woman in a black suit. From the outside, she looked like a girl of 16 or 17 years old, but from the temperament, she was much more than 16 or 17 years old. The other was a black-armored female knight riding a pale war horse in black armor. The black helmet and armor that looked like a dragon's head gave people an unimaginable impression. There was no dialogue between the two. No one knew each other better than himself. Saber, this rider Iris Veil followed Saber's instructions and stood behind, looking at the black-armored female knight nervously. It's Lancer. Altria's eyes were fixed on the black-armored female knight. It's another me, a servant who descended with Lancer's spiritual base instead of Saber's. How could it be? Hearing this, Iris Veil also remembered the another me that Saber mentioned not long ago. But, although the entire upper body was covered with armor, from the slender figure and the high bulge of the chest armor, there is no doubt that the figure of this black-armored female knight is more plump than her. And Saber Iris Veil's eyes swept over the girl in men's clothing who was wearing a black suit and had a flat chest. If you don't look closely, you might even mistake her for a man. No matter how you look at it, it doesn't look like the same person. There is no record of summoning the same servant but with different job spiritual bases. Iris Veil doesn't know what changes will happen to the same person descending with different spiritual bases. However, since Saber said so, It should be correct. At this moment, the black-armored female knight said, "Put on your armor. Fighting is inevitable. I must achieve my goal, even if it means killing myself." Her voice was almost identical to that of Saber Altria, but it was deeper and more vicissitudes of life. Moreover, it echoed like a storm and the whispers of ghosts. It was completely different from her. Saber Altria clenched her fists and took a deep breath. Although she had no magic circuits, the blood of the red dragon instantly stirred up the magic power in her body. The surging magic power was released in one breath. The magic power bursting out of her body rolled up like a tornado and wrapped around her body. The next moment, the black suit on her slender body turned into a set of silver-white skirt armor shining with silver and azure light. The armor and hand guards woven by magic power, and the long sword in her hand were entangled and covered by the wind. Although she is inferior to the black-armored female knight in terms of physical development, she is not inferior to the black-armored female knight in terms of bearing and majesty. Moreover, the temperaments of the two are completely different. If Saber Altria, wearing a silver-white skirt and armor, is more noble and noble, more like a noble king and knight, then Lancer Altria, wearing black armor, is a little more cold and ruthless, more like a slaughterer who charges into battle. You, Altria, wearing silver-white armor, clenched the invisible longsword and wanted to say something. However, she was interrupted by the black-armored female knight just after she uttered a syllable. "With our relationship, there is no need for the useless etiquette of reporting each other's names. Although we are the same person, my purpose is different from yours. Don't try to convince me with any words. It's useless." The black-armored female knight raised the black knight's spear, and the raging storm gathered on the knight's spear, like a hurricane. "If I'm not mistaken, you are not dead yet. My purpose is only one from beginning to end." The black-armored female knight lowered her helmet, revealing a face that was very similar to Altria but more mature. "Even if I become a ghost, it will not change." At this point, Saber could only swallow the words that were on the tip of her tongue. After a very short exchange, she also completely understood that the lancer in front of her was her, but not her. The other party picked up the holy spear, and the things he had experienced were completely different from the current self, and he also had completely different beliefs. He even did not hesitate to turn himself into a ghost and achieve his goal as a wild hunter. Chapter 386 I hit myself. When Iskander drove his chariot to the battle scene, he saw this scene. A female knight in black armor was attacking another servant in a silver-blue skirt armor. Boom. Invisible air release. Wind King barrier. Along with the cold and ruthless voice of the Black Knight, the treasure was released, and the storm was like countless sharp blades, entwined on the Black-Red Knight's spear in the hands of the black-armored knight, and turned into a spiral. The spiral storm instantly burst out and turned into a wild hunting wind beast. Strike air, Wind King hammer. The asphalt road was as brittle as cardboard under the claws of the raging wind beast and was torn apart in an instant. The lamp posts and trees on the side of the road were also like thin pieces of paper, and they were broken in the impact of the storm. Faced with such a situation, the blonde female swordsman in the silver-blue skirt armor also reacted instantly. She clenched the invisible weapon in her hand, bent her legs slightly, poured the surging magic power into the invisible weapon in her hand, and then, it exploded. Strike air, Wind King hammer. Not sure if she heard it wrong, Iskander felt as if she heard the same words to release the treasure. The effects of the treasure can be roughly divided into two types. The first type is the power that the attribute of the weapon as a treasure itself has, which is a type that is continuously activated in a passive form, such as the effects of various curses. The red spear in Diarmuid's hand has the passive effect of cutting off magic power. This type of treasure itself does not have the powerful effect of immediately annihilating the enemy, and the effect of the treasure is not powerful, but in other words, the continuous effect means that it is very convenient to use, and it is undoubtedly advantageous in continuous combat. If the holder is quite good at combat skills, he can also use the passive effect of this type of treasure at the right time to guide the battle in a direction that is beneficial to him. In addition, there is no need to release it, which means that there is no need to call out the real name. If it is an unknown legend, it will be difficult to recognize the origin of the other party. The other type is a noble phantasm that can only release its power by speaking its true name. After it is released, it explodes with a powerful blow. Such noble phantasms also have different destructive powers. Although the same weapon may have been held by different people in history, will the true name of the noble phantasm be the same? While many conjectures emerged in Iskandar's mind, the power of the noble phantasms released by the two servants named King Arthur and Altria had already collided with each other. The light of the lamppost went out as the pillar was shattered, and the asphalt road surface broke with a loud bang, splashing countless black asphalt blocks. The shocking storm swept around, shattering trees, green leaves flying, wood fragments flying, and bricks bursting. After the explosion, a cold call sounded, Rumlai, phew, wow, wow, and the neighing sound like the whisper of the dead. The pale gray horse Ramlai raised his front hooves high boom the moment the two hooves fell. The storm raged, blowing away all the debris such as broken stones, wood and iron pieces around, and then trample, trample. A series of horse hoof sounds sounded one after another, the gray mane fluttered, and the undead war horse was like a chariot carrying the servant opposite the master who had the same aura as the master and launched an attack. Raising the black spear in her hand, Wild Hunter Artoria mercilessly stabbed the knight's spear at herself. Facing the cavalry charge, no matter how stupid, she would not choose to block it. Saber immediately retreated and dodged, and the surging magic power exploded under her feet. However, the heavy black spear, whose destructive power was far beyond imagination, swept repeatedly at a terrifying speed while Saber was dodging, and the movement was extremely fast. The huge black gun can be so agile, and its attack power can be imagined. Clang! With a fierce metal collision sound, Saber blocked the attack with the invisible longsword in her hand, avoiding a fatal blow, but her body was also swept away 6 or 7 meters. The 2 marks left by Saber's shin armor also showed the fierceness of the attack she received. However, after this attack, the gray-black war horse with a pale white hue raised its hooves again, and it turned back like a living thing, turning an arc close to a right angle and rushing towards Saber again. Clang, 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 clang. Facing this swift and violent attack, Saber kept dodging and moving, dodging or blocking the attacks one by one. Heavy attack, avoidance, quick combo, blocking, swinging the gun stiffly, counterattack. Saber struggled with another self. She also tried to attack Malamlai, but the war horse was not an ordinary beast, but a fantasy species, reaching the monster level. When she swung the invisible sword to slash at the horse's legs, the horse's hooves were always raised in time. If she continued to attack, she could indeed hurt the war horse, but she would also be delayed by the war horse's counterattack, and then the fatal blow from the black spear would follow. The black spear also left huge potholes on the road. What kind of cruel battle did it take for a war horse to have a combat consciousness close to that of a warrior? Saber didn't know. She didn't know what kind of battle this other self had experienced, but there was no doubt that the current situation was, continuing to fight was undoubtedly a disadvantage for her. The only way was to keep the distance and then release the sword of promised victory. The opponent was extremely familiar with her combat mode, and she was able to make the most appropriate response in an instant with her strong intuition. Although a little embarrassed, she still blocked and dodged all the attacks one by one. Saber stared at Lancer's movements, observing his attack habits, the pauses between continuous attacks, and other counterattack opportunities, waiting for the opponent to reveal a flaw. In her golden pupils, a strong intuition that was close to predicting the future outlined the opponent's attack movements. At this time, the black-red spear in the hand of Black Spear Altria, like a thorn, once again condensed the momentum of being the King of Storms and the King of Wild Hunt, and the magic power gathered on the black-red knight's spear strike air. Wind King Hammer. Now, under her intuition, the most suitable judgment flashed through Saber's mind. Strike air, Wind King Hammer. The invisible longsword in Saber's hand also accumulated power almost at the same time, or even one step earlier than the opponent, but at the moment when the magic power burst out, her legs slightly exerted force and jumped lightly. Boom! When the storms collided, and the storm like a sharp blade raged again, Saber's body was blown away like a light piece of paper, and instantly crossed a distance of nearly 100 meters. Before landing, Saber clenched the sword with both hands. With the release of the Wind King hammer, the Wind King's barrier once again revealed its true face. However, this time, it was not revealed for just a moment. The Wind King's barrier did not wrap the sword again to hide its true face. Countless points of light gathered together, like fireflies, like starlight gathered. P.S. Facts have proved that the words that can be understood are rather awkward. The literal translation of the Wind King's barrier and the Wind King's hammer should be invisible wind and impact wind, while air is more directly translated as air. You all know how frustrating it is to translate it into air. Sure enough, it is better to translate it in a free way. Chapter 387, Sword of Promised Victory vs. Spear of the End. The Wind King's barrier had been untied, and the golden sword was no longer covered by the wind. The brilliant golden sword, as if promised victory, instantly illuminated the dark road with all the street lights turned off. The holy sword in the lake held by the noble Night King, who was famous throughout Europe and well known throughout the world, easily cut through the golden sword of steel, Excalibur. Sword of Promised Victory. Countless points of light gathered on the golden sword. Saber's magic power was transformed into a holy and pure light. In this dark night, it was like a ray of dawn. Everyone who saw this light was infected. The anxiety and uneasiness in their hearts were swept away in an instant, and they became calm and determined. Under the shining of this fierce and clear light, everyone was speechless. It seemed that this light could lead them to victory. Seeing this brilliant light rising into the sky, even Iskander couldn't help but be surprised. Combined with the resounding name of the treasure, he immediately understood who the swordsman in the silver blue skirt armor was. Although he was a figure who appeared 700 or 800 years after his death, as a heroic spirit, the knowledge beyond the times had already made him understand how famous this figure was. The golden light also infected him, but, unfortunately, he was different from the other party. He used his strength and his iron hoof to keep the faith of the warriors in the bloody battlefield and the endless hell full of terror and despair of death. It was not nobleness and hope. Although he was infected, there was no change in his mood. The heroic man just stood on the chariot, watching the dazzling golden light, watching the golden light cut down with the holy sword swinging from top to bottom. Iris Veil, who hid aside with Saber's warning, also felt a strange feeling in her heart, as if the golden light contained some belief. However, the female knight holding the black and red knight's gun looked at the dazzling light without any fluctuation. Or rather, her belief had already been determined, and it would not change even if she turned into a dead spirit or a wild hunter. The noble light emitted by the sword of promised victory in front of her, even if it touched her, was only a touch, even less than the impact on Iskander. But she had no means to fight back. Facing the holy light rising into the sky, Artoria, holding the black spear, fixed her eyes slightly on the black and red spear in her hand. The Wind King barrier can be released into the Wind King hammer at will, but the spear in her hand, the holy spear that can release the power of light that shines to the end, needs to meet some conditions. If the true name is to be fully released, half of the total 13 constraints must be released. Seal 13. 13 constraints released. Decision start. Round table decision starts. The voice that went straight to her heart echoed between her body and the holy spear. Stronger? The first questioning voice sounded. This is a battle with someone stronger than yourself. Admit it. Bedivere. A line on the black and red spear turned into light particles and dissipated. Duel. This is a one-on-one battle. Acknowledge. Palamids. The second seal dissipated. Elves. This is not a battle with elves. Acknowledge. Lancelot. The third seal dissipated. But, for some reason, she heard a scent of violence from it, as if Lancelot was nearby. She didn't have time to think, and the fourth question that hit her heart rang out from her heart. Selfish desire? That was Galahad's voice. She also answered without hesitation. This is a battle without selfish desire. Acknowledge. Galahad. The fourth seal dissipated, and the power of the spear of the end was released again. Then, it was Mordred's question. Evil? This is a battle with evil. Looking at the noble holy light, she couldn't deceive herself, couldn't deceive the holy spear. Don't admit it. If she couldn't even deceive herself, she naturally couldn't get it lifted. It was exactly the same voice as Mordred's, but she knew that it was the voice of the Holy Spear, and like the other voices, it was the belief and soul fragments that Mordred left in the Holy Spear. The fifth seal remained. Survival. This battle is for survival, a battle of life and death. Acknowledge. K. The voice of her sworn brother Kai, the Knight of the Round Table. The sixth restraint was released. The seventh question came from the loyal knight, Garrus. It is not a battle that betrays humanity. Acknowledge. The seventh restraint was released. This is a battle to save the world. Don't acknowledge. And this eighth question was exactly the same as her own voice. And what should have sounded next was Agriven questioning her whether this battle was for the pursuit of truth. But, at this time, there was no time. The golden light had already fallen. It was a pity that not even half of it was released. Only 6 restraints were released. But, it was enough. Grave for you, Holy Lance. Pull up the anchor, the lance that shines in the end. Wrong no Minyad. Wrong no Minyad. At this moment, everyone saw that the spear in the hand of the black-armored female knight burst into a dazzling spiral of light. Like a pillar that holds the world together, the dazzling beam of light tore through reality, as if it was almost able to tear the world apart, just a little bit. However, this dazzling beam of light is still shocking. 2 infinitely condensed beams of light, one as bright as gold, and the other pale. The light is surging, the light is roaring. The magic power was accelerated by the unrestrained rumbling bloodline and turned into a flash of light. The gushing torrent of light rolled up countless vortices, swallowing the night and colliding with the spiral of light released by the Holy Spear. Boom! The horrific explosion instantly enveloped a terrifying range of nearly 1 kilometer. This uninhabited area was destroyed in an instant. What a good show! Qin Ren crossed his legs and sat on the throne condensed by quicksand, watching the battle in the night sky. But, Qin Ren's gaze turned to the other side, to the group of temples that appeared on the sea. It should be said that you are worthy of it. You have already begun to take countermeasures against me. What a pity. Qin Ren's gaze turned to the sky, as if he saw a more distant place. You are not the real body, but just a descended servant. You can't use these means to counter me. Also, Nito, why did you follow Lara and go astray? I specially summoned you. There was an evil light shining in Qin Ren's pupils. But this is what I hope for, otherwise it will be so boring. I just hope that the other side will come later, at least until I have enjoyed the 4th war, otherwise it will be a pity. P.S. Guess who I said the last sentence to? Chapter 388 Speculations from all sides. The raging light stream, like a torrent, caused a terrifying impact, forcing Iskander to retreat. Even he could not face such an impact head-on. Even if he deployed his noble phantasm, Holy Grail War. It is such an exciting battle. His eyes swept across the ground. At this moment, the battle scene, which had turned into a huge pit, and the 2 sides of the battle had disappeared. Destroyed? Although Iskander did not have any special means of observation, he could be sure. At this time, Weber woke up drowsily and stood up. What happened? Ryder, what is this? When his eyes swept across the broken ground, he finally woke up. The battle between Saber and Lancer. After Iskander finished speaking, he was suddenly stunned. Hey, kid, there should be only 1 Lancer in the Holy Grail War, right? Weber was slightly stunned, then responded, it should be. However, in the 3rd Holy Grail War 60 years ago, Berserker was not summoned, and the Innsburn family violated the rules and summoned the 8th class servant. Weber had checked some information before coming here. However, as a magician with a low family heritage, he could not find any detailed information, and the relevant information of the Holy Grail War was controlled by the Brykson family. Before coming to Fuyuki City, he learned about the Holy Grail War because he heard a woman from the Brykson family talking to others, and it was also because of a magician from the Brykson family that he was able to obtain the Rider's Relic. The 8th job, Iskander muttered to himself. Diarmid, who appeared at the port earlier, is a lancer, and Cuchulain is a caster. The one who used Excalibur just now is undoubtedly the legendary King Arthur of Britain, and his job is Saber. That guy with a big mouth and a golden glittering face who throws a lot of noble phantasm level weapons can't be an assassin. right? It should be archer. As he said this, he seemed to think of something. With such a violent personality, maybe he is a berserker after going berserk. So far, he has not met any servant who is more like a berserker than him. If he is a rider, saber, lancer, caster, and rider have already been confirmed, so the golden guy will be a berserker for the time being. In this case, there are only assassin and archer left. Before lancer and caster fought, there was another servant who looked like caster. The sphinx that appeared before was probably sent out by her. And, when she met lancer, a mirror-like noble phantasm appeared on her head. If I'm not mistaken, the woman's outfit was in the style of ancient Egypt, and the sphinx was most likely summoned by her. A servant that can summon monsters and temples? Is it assassin or archer? The servant that just fought with saber, whose noble phantasm I have never heard of, should be a servant with some relationship to saber. If it's not archer, then it must be assassin. No matter how you look at it, it doesn't look like it. He would rather believe that it was a rider like himself, or that the golden guy was archer, and the black-armored female knight was berserker, and that Egyptian-style servant was assassin. Was the noble phantasm assassin the sphinx? Is Qin trying to recall? No, maybe the noble phantasm is not to summon the sphinx, but that she transformed into the sphinx. Is Qin recalled that there was also a legend of the sphinx in Greece, and it was a female figure. Could that Egyptian-style female servant be the sphinx? Hey, kid, is it possible that the summoned classes are repeated, but some classes are missing? Although Iskander's mind was full of conquest, he was undoubtedly a strategist. He always felt something was wrong. The black-armored female knight could be a lancer or a rider, so it would be one saber, 2 lancers or 2 riders, 1 archer, and 2 casters. After listening to Iskander's description and conjectures, Waver was also a little confused, and then he remembered the intelligence of the last Holy Grail War. This is also possible. In the last Holy Grail War, the twin sisters of the famous magic family Ilfeld both summoned sabers. Were there 2 sabers in the last Holy Grail War? Iskander muttered to himself. On the other side, in Fuyuki City, deep in the forest, In's burned castle, Kiritsugu listened to what Irizviel said and couldn't help but think deeply. Another side of Arthur, as a lancer? Yes. Irizviel nodded hurriedly. Emilia Kiritsugu opened the briefcase beside him and took out some documents from it. In the last Holy Grail War, 2 sabers appeared, but the reason was that the magic characteristic of Ilfeld was Libra. His brows were deeply furrowed. He was not unfamiliar with the affairs of the Ilfeld family. It was a famous magic family in Finland, but the family motto of the Ilfeld family was very different from that of most famous magic families. Nobles should be like mercenaries. This was the family motto of the Ilfeld family. As long as they found a good thing, they would definitely see their figures among the people competing for it. They were the terrifying most beautiful hyenas in the world. As a mercenary, Emilia Kiritsugu encountered this family many times when he was traveling around the world. Originally, magicians would be most afraid of having multiple heirs in their family, but they did the opposite. There were always 2 heirs in each generation. It was also rumored that this family had a heritage relationship with a goddess of justice in mythology. This is also the origin of the name Libra. The magic characteristics are Libra and conversion. Emilia Kiritsugu read the information. The characteristics of Libra allow the twins of the Ilfeld family to exert the effects of both sides of a thing, and conversion is to store magic power and gems. After the end of the Third Holy Grail War, one of the twins of Ilfeld died, and the other married the head of the Tauzaka family at that time. The Tauzaka family's conversion magic was also obtained because of this. There are always 2 heirs in the family, so according to this characteristic, the participants of their family can participate as 2 masters and summon the black and white sides of the servants. However, Emilia Kiritsugu compared the information and found that in the records of the Innsburn family, it was described as summoning the Saber sisters. Did they regard the 2 sides of a person as twins? Kiritsugu Emilia couldn't help but sigh. The Innsburn family was far superior to other famous mage families in magic such as puppets, but they were pathetic in collecting intelligence. The information in his hand that he asked his assistant Mia to obtain from other places was quite different from the information obtained from the head of the Innsburn family. He just discovered it now. Compared with these trivial information, It was not something he needed to consider carefully. But right now, another side of King Arthur, Saber and Lancer, Ellie. Does Lancer also have a treasure as powerful as the Sword of Promised Victory? Kiritsugu did not directly ask Saber, the main character standing beside him, as if she did not exist. He asked his wife Iris for relevant information. Chapter 389 Tozaka Tokiomi, have a headache. The Tozaka residence, Tokiomi put his left hand on his head and groaned bitterly. Since last month, a mysterious serial killer has appeared in Fuyuki City, which has been reported by the media and caused controversy. The perpetrator is a vicious criminal with a cruel method rarely seen in recent years. This month, 4 murders have been committed in Fuyuki City alone. Moreover, the last murder was yesterday. The murderer killed the whole family with cruel means, beheaded and dismembered. If we look at the time, it should be the time period before and after the servants were summoned. Because of this case, the police in Fuyuki City have set up a search headquarters and mobilized all nearby jurisdictions to solve the case as soon as possible. But now, not to mention that they can't find the suspect, even the image of the criminal can't be identified. As for why, although he was busy with preparations for the Holy Grail War, Tokiomi still had some investigations. The message came from the Brixie-san family, another supervisor of the Holy Grail War besides the Cathedral Church. As for why he had contact with the Brixie-san family, last year, the magician of the Brixie-san family came to Fuyuki City to inspect the arrangement of the Holy Grail War, and then, by chance, his daughters, Sakura and Rin, were discovered by the Brixie-san family. His eldest daughter, Rin Tozaka, has the magic attribute, the 5 elements. It is not like him, with only a single fire attribute, but an extremely rare, composite 5-element earth, fire, water, wind, and ether. Coupled with the magic attribute inherited by the Tozaka family, conversion, Rin will definitely be able to exert a strong level of magic, even reaching the achievements of the Tozaka family's ancestor. And his second daughter, Sakura Tozaka, has the magic attribute, imaginary number. It is an imaginary element that does not belong to the 5 elements, imaginary number. The conversion magic inherited by the Tozaka family is not very suitable for this magic attribute, but if you can get his magic imprint with this attribute, you will definitely be able to achieve considerable success in the future. The imprint on him can only be passed on to one person. Dividing is indeed a way, but equal division will reduce the level of the magic imprint a lot. If the magic seal is divided and shared equally, the efforts of nearly 10 generations on magic seals will be cut off. This is unrealistic and quite stupid. Although he has a connection with the Edelfeld family, he does not have the unique magic inheritance of the Edelfeld family. His magic seal can only be passed on to one person. The most suitable one is the eldest daughter, Rin Tozaka. However, he is unwilling to let Sakura Tozaka fall into mediocrity, even if he can also teach Sakura magic, but without the magic seal passed down by countless generations, the gap between starting magic from scratch is like the gap between heaven and earth. For a magician, this is too cruel. And what he was most worried about happened. Sakura was discovered by the Magic Association and the Brisson family. The magic attributes of Sakura and Rin are too rare and precious. If there is no relationship and no strength, they will undoubtedly become the target of sealing designation. If Rin is made the heir, he can protect Rin with his protection. However, in this case, Sakura may be sealed, so she must accept the protection of another magic family. Originally, he was considering sending Sakura to Finland, to the Edelfeld family, or to the Matu family in Fuyuki City. However, after Sakura was discovered by the Brixie-san family, the magician of the Brixie-san family made a suggestion: adopt this child to our Brixie-san family. The head of the family is considering dividing the family and establishing a new branch family. What kind of family is the Brixie-san family? A famous magic family with a long history of thousands of years. Even if it is a branch, it is better than the magic seal of his Tozaka family. Therefore, in a half-compromising and half-joyful mood, he adopted Sakura to the Brixie-san family. It is precisely because of this that the Tozaka family, which has a close relationship with the Holy Church and was originally rejected by many magic families and had difficulty in establishing relationships with other magic families, has now established contact with the Bryce-san family. The news came from this. However, the other party did not take Sakura away from Japan and return to England. The other party seems to be going to establish a branch family in Japan. This is good news for him. The reason why he was more inclined to send Sakura to the Matu family was that the Matu family had fallen into decline and there were no other heirs. If Sakura was adopted by the Matu family, she would definitely pass on the magic seal to her. Second, it was close. He would also have a chance to meet Sakura. Shaking his head, Tasaka Tokiomi sighed. These things were not what he should think about now. The most critical issue was that, in addition to the crazy murderer, there was a huge explosion that just happened outside the Fuyuki City airport. Although he sent his familiars to observe too slowly and observed no information, there was no doubt that it was the impact of the collision of the noble phantasms released by the two servants. Although their power was estimated to be weaker than Archer's noble phantasm, the Sword of Dissension, there was no doubt that such a noble phantasm was too threatening. The two parties that could cause such destruction might be the biggest threat in this battle. And too bad, it actually made such a big noise. Tasaka Tokiomi clenched his cane. In the world of magicians, he was the ruler of the land of Fuyuki City. Now, with such a big commotion, as the landlord of Fuyuki City, he needs to take responsibility. The rule of the Holy Grail War is that it must be conducted in secret, and this is an absolutely unchangeable principle. This is the consensus and agreement between the Cathedral Church and the Magic Association. The Cathedral Church determined that the Holy Grail that appeared in the Holy Grail War was not the real Holy Grail filled with the blood of Jesus, so it let go of control and only supervised. The Magic Association and the Bryce-san family are only supervising. However, once there is a big commotion and ordinary people notice it, he will definitely be held accountable by the Magic Association, and the Cathedral Church will also take action. Moreover, it is not just him as a landlord. The Magic Association itself has a rule to keep magic mysterious. A magician is a person who shoulders mysterious miracles. No matter who they are, as long as they are magicians, they must do their best to hide their actions and prevent the existence of magic from being known to the world. Foolish people who cannot keep secrets completely will be immediately excluded by the Magic Association. As long as it is about destroying evidence, the Magic Association's attitude is always very firm and thorough. There is no magician who is not afraid of the Magic Association's accountability. If he fails, all the masters participating in this Holy Grail War, including himself, will be excluded and wiped out by the Magic Association. In this case, no one should want anything to happen at this time to draw the attention of the world to this land. They can only contact the Bryce-san family and other magic families, and use magic and non-magic means to cover up the destruction at the scene. Tasaka Tokiomi, who was a little headache, sighed. Chapter 390 Mordred vs. Lancelot. Meanwhile, on the other side, near the port, a figure was standing not far from where Cuchulainn and Diarmuid were fighting, a servant like a shadow. The tall body was wrapped in thick and dark armor, without delicate decorations, polished luster, no decoration at all, and not even a tiny gap. Moreover, the armor was entangled with dark mist, like the darkness that emerged from the endless darkness and bottomless abyss, deep, dark, like a curtain. The dark smoke made it look like it was shrouded in shadows, just like the blurred and distorted air under high temperature. The outline was always blurred and hazy. Looking at the other party, he could only see the movements of his limbs, but could not see more clearly. Even his face was covered by the helmet and could not be seen clearly, and the only gap that could be called a gap was the horizontal gap left for the eyes. However, the sight still could not penetrate the horizontal gap. In the horizontal gap, there was only a pair of burning red pupils that were burning like flames and overflowing with a sense of violence. Standing opposite him was a short knight wearing a yellowed heavy white armor with red decorations on the armor. The two seemed to have something in common. They could not see clearly. Although the heavy white armor did not cover all traces like the black servant, it seemed to be able to block prying eyes to some extent. The more carefully you looked, the less you could see. "You, who are you?" The short knight, Mordred shouted loudly. Just now, when she got permission from the Qin people and rushed to the port, she encountered this dark servant, Berserker. There is no doubt that if the opponent was not summoned by her master who treated the servant as an opera singer, it would be the original Berserker in this Holy Grail war. After encountering the opponent, Mordred did not think much and started to fight directly. Before having dinner and meeting her dear father, she could warm up first. With this idea in mind, she started fighting with the Berserker. However, as the battle progressed, she felt more and more wrong. This Berserker seemed very familiar with her fighting style, and she also felt that the other party's fighting skills were inexplicably familiar. However, because the weapon the other party was holding was a long-handled iron hammer picked up casually from the roadside where construction was going on. However, even if the thing he was holding was an iron hammer, he could make the iron hammer exert the strength of a treasure. Even in terms of fighting skills, he was slightly better than herself. As a knight of the Round Table, there were not many people who could defeat him in weapon skills. However, the other party did not have any possibility of communication. In response to her inquiry, the Berserker only responded with a crazy roar. Then, the warhammer rushed over like a wild beast. An unpleasant, curse-like roar resounded through the night sky. As the monster-like roar sounded, the Berserker's hammer swung out in an arc. Mordred immediately swung the king's sword in his hand, clarent, more dazzling than any silver, with a silver arc passing through the air. The silver sword and the hammer collided. Clang, like the sound of iron hammering, the metallic sound with echoes resounded in the air. Mordred could feel that the huge force that was obviously comparable or even faintly superior came from the silver sword in her hand, shaking her gauntlet. However, just as the hammer and sword intersected, Mordred spread her legs and released the force, but found that the opponent had withdrawn the hammer and smashed it down from the right side. So fast. Surprised, Mordred quickly lowered the long sword in his hand, slightly tilted his body, and blocked the long sword to the right with the fastest speed and the shortest path to resist the attack. However, at this moment, a warning flashed through her mind. No, it was a fake move. But she had no room or time to make more moves, as the opponent's moves were obviously faster than hers. Mordred realized this and quickly curled up his arms and blocked his neck, preparing to block the blow for the purpose of reducing damage. Sure enough, the heavy hammer that was swinging with great force and hitting her right arm was just a cover. The opponent's right hand had already grasped the connection between the hammer body and the handle, and his left hand slid from the end of the hammer body to the middle, and the long hammer handle stabbed towards her throat like a spear. At the end of the hollow hammer handle, a corner was missing at some point, and the sharp end was undoubtedly a sharp blade. However, because of Mordred's keen intuition, this attack was blocked. Ding! Exclamation mark. Unlike the heavy blow of the heavy hammer, this stab for the purpose of surprise attack did not have enough destructive power. If the throat was hit, it would have caused serious injuries, but the hit on the obviously thicker wrist armor only left a deep dent. After blocking the attack, Mordred held a dazzling silver longsword in her right hand and slashed at the Berserker's head. Although her speed was fast enough, the obviously faster speed made the Berserker block. The hands holding the hammer handle slashed to both sides, and the heavy hammer was raised diagonally. Clang! Mordred's slash was directly blocked by the hammer handle. Then, he launched another attack. The opponent obviously realized that the surprise attack had little effect, and immediately changed tactics. When Mordred was on guard against the surprise attack, he continued to use continuous heavy blows. Boom, boom, boom. Between the three hammer strikes, the road surface seemed to be blown up as if it was exploded, and the asphalt that was broken into pieces and fine pieces splashed everywhere. The black dust filled the sky, which interfered with Mordred's vision to a certain extent. Just as Mordred was dodging the steel and concrete fragments that were splashed by the Berserker's heavy blows, she saw the Berserker using all four limbs and rushing at her like a wild beast. There was no time for her to give up dodging the fragments and try to dodge again. Are you really a Berserker? Mordred, who was extremely frustrated, roared, released his magic power, used the sword blade as a shield, stepped forward with his right foot, stood forward, used offense as defense, and once again changed to a frontal defense posture. The dazzling silver longsword was shrouded in powerful power and slashed heavily. Clang, crack. Once again, the familiar sound of metal clashing sounded, but this time, the black hammer with black and red lines shattered. Although this guy can turn the things he catches into a treasure, the strength of the treasure has a limit. Mordred realized this instantly. Since there is a limit, then, boom. The surging magic power burst out of his body again. The dazzling silver sword directly cut the heavy hammer in half, and then slashed straight towards the berserker. Chapter 391. The mastermind behind this is me, Qin Ren. However, just when her weapon was about to cut the berserker in front of her, the servant in front of her suddenly disappeared. She released her magic power and slashed down with her long sword, hitting the ground. Boom! Exclamation mark. A large pit nearly 10 meters wide suddenly appeared. Damn it! Mordred stomped heavily on the ground, and the thick foot armor left a deeper pit in the pit. She was almost completely suppressed from beginning to end, and the fight was so frustrating. When she was about to achieve the result, the opponent escaped. This feeling is hard to describe. After swinging her long sword to vent her anger and splitting the stone slab at her feet that was just lifted up by the berserker with a heavy hammer into 2 pieces, Mordred took a deep breath and turned her eyes to the direction of the port and the airport. Then, she turned her eyes to the heavy armor on her body. I have to ask that bastard master to buy me some clothes. Why should I buy you clothes? Qin Ren muttered to himself in silence. At this moment, another voice sounded. What are you buying clothes for? It was a white young man wearing a gray-blue sportswear with a hood. He looked weak, as if he had absorbed too much power. Next to him was a servant shrouded in black mist. It was the berserker who had just fought with Mordred. At this time, he was standing quietly in the same place. Kid, let the berserker become a spirit first. Your magic circuit is too poor and your vitality is almost exhausted. The one who spoke was another person, a little girl wearing a gothic skirt and holding a parasol. Although she looked petite, only about 13 or 14 years old, her tone was quite mature. The little girl stood behind Qin Ren, completely in the posture of a lower-ranking person. Looking at the girl, the white-haired young man glanced at the command seal on his hand that had lost a scratch, and whispered silently, Berserker. The moment he heard the voice, the berserker's body changed from a physical body to a spirit body. Seeing the other party's extremely submissive reaction, Qin Ren smiled. Mr. Karaya, don't worry, we will fulfill the agreement between us. Just like we agreed at the beginning, we stopped Sakura from the Tozaka family and prevented her from being adopted to the Mita family, and you, become a good actor and put on a good show for me. The white-haired young man, that is, Mitukaraya, listened to the other party's words and just remained silent. After a long silence, he finally spoke. I understand. However, after saying this, he had no intention of speaking again. Qin Ren looked at him and shook his head in his heart. A dog licker cannot get a house. It can be said that Mitukaraya is the most tragic character in FZ. He had originally left the world of magicians and became an ordinary person. After learning that Sakura was adopted to the Mita family and became Mita Sakura, in order to get Sakura away from the Mita family, he returned to the Mita family again and reached an agreement with the insect master Mituzkan that if he could obtain the Holy Grail, he would let him take Mita Sakura away from the Mita family. To this end, he did not hesitate to sacrifice himself and let Mituzkan implant the CO bug into his body. Before the Holy Grail War, he was destined to live only a few months. Sacrifice himself for others, his purpose, his obsession, was played and trampled. Tousaka Aoi, Tozaka Tokiomi's wife, the object of Mitakaraya's secret love. He would sacrifice himself to take Mitasakura away. Of course, he had the feeling of treating Mitasakura as his own child, but more because of Tousaka Aoi. Even after Aoi married into the Tozaka family and became Tozaka Tokiomi's wife, Karaya respected her choice and believed that Tokiomi could give Aoi happiness, so he chose to let go of this feeling. After that, he had been silently guarding them mother and daughter. In order to avoid disturbing Aoi, he left Fuyuki, but out of longing, he often came back to meet with Aoi and her daughter, and got along with them as a good friend and uncle. However, in the end, After being played and framed by the delighted Kotamin Kairai, Tozaka Aoi mistook the murderer of Tozaka Tokiomi as Matukariya, and said, "You have never loved anyone at all," finally died tragically. So, a bootlicker cannot get a house. I will refuse to be a bootlicker and start with me. Of course, Qin Ren did not mean to mock Kariya, he just sighed for his miserable experience. This is also the reason why he would take the initiative to help Kariya. Qin Ren made a promise with him, asking him to be a good actor, and after the Holy Grail War, he would help him change his appearance and let him leave with Muntasakura. Matukariya can take any path he wants. If he wants to be a magician, he can. He can help him change his appearance and make him the new head of the Briseson family, and Mutasakura can also get the branch of Minoli's magic seal. If he wants to be an ordinary person, that's fine too. After a brief conversation, Qin Ren just watched Matukariya's slightly hunched body disappear into the night. At this time, the Gothic girl next to him blinked and looked at the man. "Mr. Izir, why do you want to help him?" She didn't understand at all. This man's qualifications were extremely poor. He could be said to be the lowest among the lowest magicians. The qualifications of Tozaka Sakura were good, but with Mr. Izir's ability, even if she was so powerful, she could only be manipulated at will. She didn't understand why he was so powerful, but would be interested in such a person. Reason? There is no reason. Qin Ren looked at her and just smiled. "Because it's fun, isn't it, Minoli? You are still young and don't understand." "I am already 500 years old, sir, and I am still the head of the Brisson family," Minoli answered silently. "Do you think 500 years is a long time?" Qin Ren smiled and turned around, walking away leisurely. Minoli wanted to say that 500 years was a long time, but until now she had not figured out the other party's true identity at all, and could not touch the limit of the other party's ability at all. However, one thing is certain, the other party is a more powerful and more ancient existence than her. It was even older than the history of the demon book page in the Briseson family. She even made a bold guess that the other party was the zeroth pillar demon god, the Eye of Eternal Prisoner. Yes, I'm just a 500-year-old child, 500 years old." In the angry and self-destructive muttering, Minoli's figure turned into a shadow and chased after Qin Ren. Mansion. An old man with a haggard face and full of wrinkles was standing there, as if waiting for something. Not long after, he suddenly saw a person standing in front of him, a blond young man. It was Qin Ren. He walked to the sofa without hesitation and sat down as if he was at home, then crossed his legs, supported his face with his right hand, and looked at the old man. "How about it, Mr. Machiri? What do you think?" The old man said nothing. He could feel that after the other party appeared, all the familiars in the entire mansion curled up, something he had never seen before. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 392 Hizen. I really don't want to be a pervert. Looking at the familiar face of the other party, Matuzkin was a little dazed, but soon, he recovered. "Izir, why are you here?" He tilted the corner of his mouth that was deeply buried in wrinkles, revealing an expression that was not human, and the face seemed to be made up of countless wriggling insects. "You are really disgusting, Zkin." Qin Ren tilted his head and flicked his fingers. The surging mana turned into a dark mana stream like lightning. The light stream shot out in a straight line and reached Zkin, but suddenly turned and bypassed Zkin, piercing through a mosquito-like familiar insect behind Zkin. "If I remember correctly, when you were young, you preferred to use familiars such as butterflies and bees." Matuzkin did not dodge at all when the dark lightning stream shot towards him. In other words, before he could react, the attack was over. After a moment of silence, the old man spoke. "Butterfly magic, propyliomagia, is a magic that simulates a series of changes from a caterpillar to a pupa and then to a butterfly. However, butterfly magic can control too few familiars. We, the Zorjan family, are good at creating and controlling more familiars. And I am better at magic that absorbs characteristics. After improvements, I created insect magic. At this moment, Metuzonkin's pupils condensed, and a pool of wriggling shadows suddenly solidified in his vision, followed by the voice of a young girl. So that's it. The head of a branch of the Sissaman family was killed and the magic seal was taken away. It turned out that you did it. Seeing the person coming, Metuzonkin's face changed slightly, but then he calmed down. I didn't kill him. You didn't kill him, but you took the magic seal. Minoli took 2 steps towards the Qin people, and the black and gray Gothic group swayed slightly. Faced with Minoli's aggressive tone, Metuzonkin did not answer. Forget it. Even if the magician of the Sissaman family comes to identify the magic seal you took from him, he can't recognize it. As she spoke, Minoli stopped behind Qin Ren. Minoli's action made Metuzonkin's face, which had originally returned to calm, fluctuate again. After a long silence, he said, "What do you want to do?" His eyes swept outside, and the turbid eyes swept through the familiar courtyard where he had lived for hundreds of years. You set up the barrier unconsciously, so you shouldn't come to chat with me. Cooperation. Qin Ren smiled. I want to summon the designated servants. Hearing this, Metuzonkin said silently, the 7 servants have already. Before he finished speaking, he felt a wave of magic power. The next moment, a gray-brown girl with a white mask on her face and a 3-meter-tall strong man appeared in front of him. Assassin Berserker. Metuzonkin muttered to himself. What servant do you want to summon? By now, he also understood that the other party was well prepared. Even Joan of Arc, Jeanne of Arc, the French saint during the Anglo-French War. I need an anti-heroic spirit. Qin Ren tapped the armrest of the sofa with his fingers. Machili, as a family famous for creating familiars, and the creator of the servant system, you should be able to do it, right? Hearing this, a bright light flashed in Metuzonkin's sunken eye sockets. I can't do it. After a pause, he looked up and looked at the man who appeared hundreds of years ago when he went to visit Paracelsus and tried to cooperate with the other party. You should know that the Holy Grail War is made to imitate the legendary magic ceremony of the Advent middle. Summoning of heroic spirits. All we can do is imitate heroic spirits to create servants. The servants that descend are the aspects of heroic spirits. The aspects that heroic spirits do not have cannot be created. Of course he knew Joan of Arc during the Anglo-French War. How could such a being, worshipped as a saint by Christianity, a national hero of France, and a saint, come as an anti-heroic spirit? The so-called anti-heroic spirit refers to a person who acts with hateful evil deeds, but saves humanity in the end, and is therefore worshipped as a hero. If it were a few hundred years ago, when Joan of Arc had not been cleared of her crime and was still a witch who committed adultery with the devil Satan, it might be possible, but now, it is impossible. As the creator of the Holy Grail War servant system, he is naturally more familiar with the spirit ritual middle. Heroic spirit summoning, a great ceremony that involves the entire world in legend and is like a myth. He knows whether it can be summoned or not. The hunched body exuding a foul smell moved slightly. The most I can do is to add a berserker curse and let it come as a berserker. This is the limit of what he can do. Qin Ren was also a little distressed by Metuzonkin's honest showdown. According to the story in FGO, Marshal C made a wish to the Holy Grail to revive Jeanne d'Arc, and because of Marshal C's hatred for France, he created Black Jeanne d'Arc. It is absolutely impossible to summon Black Jeanne d'Arc with normal summoning methods. Moreover, he had been rejected when he used Jeanne d'Arc's holy relic to summon Jeanne d'Arc before. Therefore, he not only had to summon, but also had to force the summoning. But this is impossible. It is not impossible for him to forcibly pull a heroic spirit down from the throne of heroes, but there are so many evil spirits in the throne of heroes, facing the heroic spirits in their original form instead of the servants rushing up, he may not be able to defeat them. If I had known earlier, I should have taken a piece of Jeanne d'Arc's underwear, and the contract said that if you don't respond to the summoning, your underwear will be announced to the world or something. Of course, it's just a thought, not to mention whether the heroic spirits would care about such a despicable method. Even Qin Ren himself would not be able to get over it psychologically. He is not a pervert. It is not difficult to imitate the method of Marshal C summoning Black Jeanne d'Arc in the first chapter of FGO. The first is to use the huge magic power to construct the spiritual base. This is no problem. He has no shortage of energy and other things. The second is to use the magic of wishing to construct a false Joan of Arc soul with the opposite personality of the heroic spirit. This is also no problem. Qin Ren, who created the Yellow Sand Gods, has no problem in shaping the characters, and he also has the power of prophecy. Although it has been integrated into the skills of the Eye of Eternal Prisoner, it can still be done with the power of prophecy. But the problem is that the Joan of Arc created by his power of prophecy is just like the Yellow Sand Gods he created. The personality and abilities are all set by him. Can this setting be exactly the same as the Black Joan in Fugo? After all, he would feel itchy from time to time, and then add some unnecessary settings, which is a magic change. Qin Ren is quite entangled. Chapter 393, Bug, Master. Let Marshal C suppress Black Jean? That's a bit of a problem, because the purpose of summoning Black Jean is to make Black Jean the opponent of Marshal C. Letting Marshal C summon Black Jean goes against his original intention. But wait a minute, it seems that there is room for manipulation. It is not necessary to let Black Jean stand on your side and oppose Marshal C. Do some tricks to let Marshal C summon Black Jean, and then get another servant on your side to fight Marshal C. Isn't it? There is no need to entangle it. As for how to manipulate Marshal C, it's very simple. The treasure in Marshal C's hand is the Reliati textbook, or the Relia text. This is a magic book bound with human skin, which records the taboo knowledge about the ancient evil gods before the emergence of humans. This magic book can summon and enslave monsters in the deep sea. This book has the ability to serve as a magic furnace core, and can ignore the magic power of the caster and automatically launch magic at the level of great magic and ritual spells. This thing is a Cthulhu mythology element, a myth created by modern novelist Howard Phillips Lovecraft. By the way, the faceless sphinx summoned by Ramses II in Type Moon is also one of the incarnations of Nyarlathotep's in Cthulhu elements. However, the faceless sphinx summoned by Ramses II in Type Moon is just a joke, and it does not actually involve Cthulhu elements. In Cthulhu mythology, Nitocris is a ghoul queen. Of course, Type Moon only plays the joke to a certain extent, and does not actually involve Nito and Cthulhu elements. This is also something that he, a Nito fan, accidentally discovered when he went to check the relevant settings of Nito. Let's get back to the topic. Marshal C's Relia text does involve Cthulhu elements. Moreover, in the Type Moon setting, Gilles de Rais holds the Italian translation of the magician Franco's Plurati. The original text is in the language of the Zayat dynasty. The reason why Marshal C can become Marshal C is because he holds this Luoyan city textbook. However, Francois himself is related to the myth of the demon god. His treasure, Luoyan city, does not exist, so the madness of the world will never end. Grand illusion has the effect of showing people the true body of Beelzebub, demon god. Beelzebub. Does it sound familiar? Yes, that's right. Beelzebub, the demon god of disease, commonly known as the king of flies, is the first pillar Baal in the myth of the demon pillar. As a Relia text, the Luoyan city textbook itself is an element of Cthulhu mythology. Francois, who handed the Luoyan city textbook to Marshal C, himself involved the demon pillar myth. What a coincidence! The Qin people are very familiar with the demon pillar myth. The kind that is very familiar, the kind that can't be more familiar. If you want to do something to Marshal C, and guide Marshal C to make a Black Zen as the mastermind behind the scenes, there is no problem at all. Besides, Qin Ren raised his right hand. Wow! Accompanied by the dull and intermittent sound of chains, a dark, twisted book appeared on Qin Ren's right hand. The moment the twisted book appeared, it diffused an evil and twisted light, and eye-like lines were all over the twisted book. Minoli, who was next to him, subconsciously turned her head to look when she felt this breath, but immediately, she seemed to remember something and closed her eyes. But Matuzkin, who was next to him, subconsciously shifted his sights to the twisted book when he sensed this breath, and his consciousness was distorted, falling into endless thinking. This is mine. As if the twisted book had some knowledge that attracted them, Matuzkin, who was attracted and twisted by the twisted book, screamed wildly. His whole body disintegrated, and turned into countless buzzing flying insects to pounce on the twisted book in Qin Ren's hand. Countless familiar insects scattered throughout the Mutu mansion also crawled or flapped their wings to approach the twisted book. Then, the countless lines on the twisted book that looked like eyeballs solidified instantly. Densely packed, countless eyeballs opened at the same time, and the countless flying insects that pounced on the twisted book instantly turned into salt and turned into gray-white salt statues. The salted insects fell to the ground and turned into powder. And Qin Ren also felt that there were suddenly several pages filled with text in the twisted book. Master Bug, I forgot to remind you. Don't look at it. Qin Ren looked at the salted insect corpses on the ground in silence. Master Bug died like this. What about Wu Zhan? The important supporting role is gone? Forget it. It doesn't matter. I'll create another one after I get the memory. Qin Ren snapped his fingers, and the surging mana flowed out of his body. The extra words on the pages of the twisted book gathered and emerged with light and shadow, twisting together with the mana flowing out of Qin Ren's body. The salt stain scattered on the ground flew up and formed a human figure. A blue-haired young man appeared in front of Qin Ren and bowed his head respectfully to Qin Ren, an inferior version of the distorted mirror image. Normally, the distorted mirror image is reconstructed with the original ability and additional abilities after being absorbed and integrated into Qin Ren's body. But this Changyi was killed by the subconscious of the twisted book. No, to be precise, by his instinctive counterattack. In front of him, Changyi's level, let alone holding on to death, his consciousness was directly annihilated from head to toe. Qin Ren did not absorb his power and soul at all. However, there is still Changyi's soul light ball in the yellow sand world. However, this soul ball only sucked the soul of Master Chang that was destroyed and turned into powder into the yellow sand world, and then roughly squeezed it into a ball. It has nothing to do with Master Chang's original soul. At most, there is only a memory stored in the soul ball, and it is still a messy one. This is the most embarrassing thing for Qin Ren now. In the past, before the fusion of the eternal prisoner demon god, he killed the target, and the yellow sand world pulled the target's soul into the yellow sand space at the moment he killed the target, and then roughly squeezed it into a ball. But now, the eternal prisoner demon god, especially the Book of Distortion, has too strong destructive power on the soul and memory. If the target is too weak, the soul will be directly annihilated. Fortunately, the Book of Distortion itself can extract memories, otherwise, he will not be able to get a complete memory in the future, and can only get a pile of memories that have been shredded by a shredder. But speaking of it, was Master Chang quite handsome when he was young? It feels like Kuchulain. Qin Ren looked at Matuzankan, or Machiri's origin, who was in the posture of a blue-haired young man. But he's still not as handsome as me. After saying this, a line suddenly popped up in his mind. In other games, people as handsome as me are usually the protagonists. Chapter 394. Ha 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 ha. Fuiuki City, beside the Muin River, a huge underground water outlet. In this space enclosed in darkness, weak moans or sobs are echoing. They are not screams or curses, but low sounds that are too weak to even struggle and cry. The sticky, rotten and sour smell of blood permeates this space, and in this darkness, a ball of light floats in the air, emitting a hazy light, illuminating this dark place. Indistinctly, dozens of half-dead women and children can be seen arranged in a horrible way, like handicrafts. This is good. An orange-haired young man turned his fingers flexibly, and a scalpel that he got from an unknown hospital was flexibly spinning on his fingertips. As if remembering something, the orange-haired youth turned his head and looked at the tall and thin man behind him. Master, what are you doing? Behind him, the real caster of this holy grail war, Gilda Ray, was rubbing his hands on a crystal ball the size of a leather ball, as if searching for something. The hazy light and shadow emerging from the crystal ball reflected on his face. The image in the crystal ball was a huge castle, located in the forest outside Fuiuki City. The crystal ball from a distance showed the entire castle in its entirety. However, when he tried to take a closer look at the scene inside the castle, the light and shadow became a little blurry. It was a barrier. The castle had set up a barrier to interfere with prying. Although his attainments in magic were not high, it was not difficult to destroy this barrier. However, He did not intend to destroy that barrier. The skinny palm, which was 1 round larger than that of an ordinary person and 1 round larger than a normal person's face, gently brushed over the crystal ball. The hazy light and shadow dissipated. All have been fulfilled. I was skeptical at first. I didn't expect the Holy Grail to be omnipotent. The orange-haired young man, Akutagawa Rinasuke, was slightly stunned, and tentatively repeated, "Master." He didn't know if it was his illusion, but he actually saw a heartfelt joy on the master's face. Did he see something happy? "It's okay, Rinasuke." A kind smile appeared on Caster Gildere's face. "I'm going to meet Jean." "Jean?" Rinasuke muttered in his heart. He had heard the master mutter this name more than once. Then, he saw the master muttering to himself with a little excitement, "Oh, holy girl, my holy girl, I will come to you to greet you soon. Please, please wait a moment." While muttering to himself, he was about to transform into a spirit. But at this moment, he felt a breath. He paused slightly, stretched out his hands, and a thick human skin book appeared in his hands. With the book as the center, huge magic power surged and spread to the surroundings. It seemed that some thoughts were coming out of it. "My ally Francois." Gilderes blinked his protruding eyes with a slightly puzzled look. "What's the matter?" Although the tone was asking, it was just his soliloquy. This was the magic book left to him by his ally. With this book, he obtained the magic to command the demon army. But now, this magic book is emitting a strong, evil, and twisted light. The next moment, he saw a dark power emerge, and the Luoyan city textbook was trying to escape from his hand. It seemed that it was interfered by some power and wanted to take the Luoyan city textbook from him. How could this be allowed? However, just as he stretched out his hand to touch the Luoyan city textbook and tried to stop this power, a voice full of resentment and anger came out of that power. "Gil." Hearing this voice, Gilderes was startled. "Joan of Arc?" At the same time, on the sea, in the grand temple of the composite light, a huge temple that looked like a mirage was floating in the sky above the sea. Ha 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 ha. Rider Ramesses II raised his hands high with a loud laugh. As he raised his hands high, countless light strips reminiscent of magic circuits emerged one after another from the throne, the floor, walls, and ceiling at the deepest part of the central temple. The dark central temple was filled with the brilliance of magic in an instant. The lion-shaped synthetic beasts, the sphinxes, which were gathered from the rocky quicksand, stood up one by one. The huge great electric sphere burst into lightning and roared like the anger of a god. At this moment, his greatest treasure was activated, Ramessium Tentiris. And not far from him, Nitocris was standing in the center of a magic circle. The ancient Egyptian magic circle composed of the life symbol Ankh and various hieroglyphic characters is continuously extracting the source of magic power from the earth veins and supplying it to the Glory Grand Temple. Now, the Glory Grand Temple has completely descended into reality and can exist in the world for a long time. More importantly, at this moment, not far in front of him, surrounded by several sphinxes, a human-shaped coffin is slowly closing. In the center of the coffin is a mummy wrapped in bandages and filled with surging magic power. The posture of the mummy is exactly the same as that of Ramses II. On the human-shaped coffin, there is a small sapling condensed by magic power. Ancient Egyptian resurrection magic. The resurrection magic of Osiris, the god of the underworld. If it were him, he would not be able to do this. However, with the help of Nitocris, he completed this thing. As long as the tree grows, he will transfer his soul into the mummy, then he can use the mummy as a carrier to revive. After being summoned, he also discovered that his body was completely controlled by his master, the unknown ally. Although his unknown ally had told him the news about the Holy Grail War, it was not much. Through Nito, he got more information about the so-called Holy Grail War from the local magician. Holy Grail. Yes, I crave the Holy Grail. This world is destined to be ruled by me. He wants to be resurrected and rule this world. Nito's method is only temporary, and the main purpose is to get rid of the control of his ally. With this method of resurrection, once the great source of magic in the earth veins of this area is exhausted or his connection with the earth veins is cut off, he will die again. If the wish of the Holy Grail is real, if he obtains the Holy Grail, he can truly be resurrected. P.S. Lars' laughter is really evil. Chapter 395. The second day. The first day of the Holy Grail War came to an end, and the second day began. The second day, at noon, in the luxurious guest room on the top floor of the 32-story building of the Fuiuki Hide Hotel, a man in a dark blue windbreaker was standing in front of the window. Kenneth L. Malloy Archibald, this genius magician who was just a short distance away from the crown, was standing in front of the window, looking at the scenery below. As a magician with a completely different outlook from ordinary people, the luxury of the room was completely vulgar to him. As an aristocrat among magicians, such an arrangement was a complete joke. But he was not angry because of this, but because of the situation last night. Rider, king of conquerors Iskander, caster, Qin, son of light. At present, he only knew the information about these two servants. The identity of the arrogant and disgusting golden servant is still uncertain, but it is obvious that his unknown noble phantasm is very powerful, and he can show obvious contempt for the king of conquerors and Alexander the Great, a king from the age of gods who is older than Alexander. Or is he a king in mythology? Or is he an arrogant fool? Kenneth is not stupid, but the information he has obtained is not enough for him to judge who the golden servant is. There was a battle near the port and the airport respectively. Who fought with whom? Kenneth is a little annoyed now. He is too focused on the caster and rider, which leads to the neglect of intelligence in other places. Today, he must spread the familiars everywhere to investigate. Thinking in his heart, Kenneth's eyes turned to the side, where his servant Lancer, Diarmid, was standing next to him with a respectful attitude. However, he has many wariness about his servant. First of all, the servant summoned by the Holy Grail War's summoning ceremony must be a heroic spirit who has a need for the Holy Grail, that is, a wish that needs to be fulfilled. But, Lancer, he actually said that he had no desire for the Holy Grail. A poor servant full of lies. Cursing in his heart, Kenneth couldn't help but think of the legend of Diarmid, a knight of the Fiona Knights, who betrayed his master, betrayed the leader Finn, and eloped with Finn's wife. Thinking of the look in his fiancé Sora's eyes when he looked at Diarmid, Kenneth felt as sick as if he had eaten a fly. Sora still loved him. It must be because of this servant, that disgusting charm magic, even if he knew that in the legend, the curse was one of the sources of the tragedy that accompanied Diarmid's life. But even so, what? Can you seduce the master's wife for a reason? After gritting his teeth for a few words in his heart, Kenneth raised his head and looked down at the ground. In his eyes, blessed by the magic of looking far away, a short young man appeared in the extremely far field of vision. Weber Velvet. Waver was very annoyed. Rider, that guy, ran around everywhere, ran around all night. He had been sitting in the chariot, flying everywhere. Yesterday, he didn't go back to his place to sleep until 2 or 3 o'clock. Now, that guy is going out again. He wants to buy some clothes. He said something like, "I saw Caster and another Lancer this morning. Those two guys were wearing modern clothes. I can't fall behind." What do you mean by falling behind? Why are you comparing yourself with others in a place like this? After being stalked by him, that guy said he wanted to find a place to sell wine, and he wanted to buy the best wine. Is this what the famous conqueror king in history did? Waver's uncontrollable desire to complain made him mutter without stopping. Compared to that, it is more important to collect information about other servants, right? If you meet Caster and Lancer, why don't you fight? At least get 1 or 2 results. Of course, this sentence is just a complaint. Waver knows very well that the principle of magicians is to act in secret, and the battles in the Holy Grail War are basically started at night, and during the day, it is assumed that there is a ceasefire and intelligence is collected. Now, what he has to do is to collect intelligence. He was going to the library to find information about the servants. Saber was the legendary King Arthur, who is well known throughout the world. Similarly, the information recorded in the archives must also contain information about the opponent's weaknesses and abilities. Finding out these things would be beneficial for combat. Archer was the golden guy, and it was not clear yet, but the scope could be determined. He was a king older than Ryder, and there was a legend that he collected weapons, so he should be able to find a group of people. Lancer was Diarmid, and Caster was Cuchulainn, 2 famous figures in Celtic mythology, who were also well known in Europe. Although this was Japan, it was not difficult to find relevant information. Ryder judged that the second Lancer might be a knight related to King Arthur and belonging to the Knights of the Round Table, or even a sign of King Arthur. He could also check the relevant information. There was also the female servant who could summon or transform into a sphinx, who was suspected to be the second caster. And he could also check Ryder's information, although he didn't like this kind of rough big guy, since he was his servant. He also needed to know more about him. We have to get the information of most enemies before night falls. Although he kept complaining, Waver was still very quick. It didn't take him long to get to the library in Fuyuki City. However, standing in front of the door of Fuyuki Library, Waver was a little nervous, because last night, Ryder broke into the library and plundered and conquered a book with a world map. At this moment, Ryder's rough voice rang in his ears again. "Hey, kid, buy me a set of modern clothes first." Waver raised his eyebrows. "Why are you obsessed with modern clothes?" Just when he wanted to say something, he heard Ryder's voice again. "Kid, be careful, there's a guy coming over." That guy is a little abnormal. The voice was full of vigilance and alertness. This situation made him very strange. After yesterday's interaction, he knew very well that even yesterday, when he met the golden servant who looked like Archer, Ryder didn't have this attitude. Waver immediately turned his head and looked in the direction Ryder said. What entered his sight was a smiling blond young man, with his hands in his pockets, looking around. He didn't know if it was his illusion, but he felt that the other party's eyes were fixed on him, and those eyes were not the other party's real eyes at all. This strange feeling was immediately replaced by vigilance when the other party said the next sentence. "Hey, Ryder's master." Chapter 396. Director, I want an extra lunch. "Who are you?" Weber, who had become alert because of Ryder's reaction, asked cautiously. "Me?" Qin Ren smiled at the blond young man. "First meeting. I am the supervisor of the Holy Grail War, Izir Qin. The supervisor of the Magic Association?" Weber was slightly stunned. "Boy, is it an acquaintance?" Iskander's voice sounded in his ears. "It's the supervisor of the Holy Grail War," Weber explained to him. "The Holy Grail War is carried out under the supervision of the Magic Association and the Holy Church. The Holy Church sends one person and the Magic Association sends one person to check and supervise the progress of the Holy Grail War and deal with what happens in the Holy Grail War." At this point, he seemed to remember something. What happened in the forest in the direction of the airport yesterday was also handled by the supervisor. Although Weber explained, Iskander's voice did not relax. He still felt that there was something wrong with the young man in front of him, which made him feel creepy. It's not fear, but it feels wrong, very inconsistent. At this moment, he suddenly found that the other party's eyes shifted to him who was still in the spiritual state. "This is Ryder. Nice to meet you." No. The moment their eyes met, Iskander's heart was shocked. He seemed to have seen this pair of eyes before, and the other party's eyes did not give him the feeling of facing a famous person whom he had just met for the first time. This person is very familiar to him. At least he had seen him before. Iskander almost couldn't help but materialize and confront the other party face to face. However, at this time, the other party stretched out his finger and blocked his mouth. "Mr. Ryder, the Holy Grail War requires covert operations. Please do not materialize in public at will. I do not want to use large-scale psychological suggestion magic to deal with the aftermath." And then, "There is a message to convey to all the masters participating in the Holy Grail War. During this Holy Grail War, someone tampered with the spirit vein and summoned illegally." Qin Ren played the role of a supervisor very competently. In addition to the official 7 servants of different occupations, someone else summoned other servants of the same occupation. In other words, now, there are more than 7 servants in the Holy Grail War? Waver asked with a little surprise. "Yes, we are now tracking down who tampered with the spirit vein, but it has also been confirmed that there are a total of 8 servants summoned illegally this time." 8? Because he was too surprised, Waver's voice could not help but rise. There were only 7 servants in the Holy Grail War, but this time there were 8 more. That is to say, Iskander said in the spiritual state, A total of 15 heroes from different times and regions appeared in this war? How amazing! The two did not hear any dissatisfaction in his voice, and even felt a faint excitement. Yes, the Emperor's performance made Qin Ren look at him with admiration. Then, he nodded and continued, "For the servants summoned in violation of the rules this time, it is an unexpected matter. Although I will notify all the masters one by one, the supervisor of the Holy Church will convene all the masters for a centralized discussion. Please send your own servants to the Fuiuki Church tonight." "Well, that's all I have to say, both of you. I'm leaving first." After speaking, Qin Ren turned around and left, entering the crowd and disappearing from the sight of the two. Illegal summoning? Waver stroked his unshaven chin with his right hand. "Rider, this also explains the previous situation." But Iskander did not reply to him, but said another sentence. "Hey, kid, I met other servants." "Two more. They are also wearing modern clothes." "What are you talking about? Do you really want modern clothes?" "Wait, what did you say?" "Two servants." Waver seemed to have just reacted, raised his head, and turned his gaze to the direction Ryder said. In the field of vision, a brown-haired and brown-skinned young man with no lining, only a black coat, exposing his chest and abdomen, was walking slowly on the street. Behind him, there was another brown-skinned girl following behind. Really? Waver felt that something happened today. In the underground workshop of the Tasaka mansion, Tasaka Tokiomi was very troubled. 8 extra servants summoned? Even though the creed was upholding elegance, he couldn't hold it back at this time. Even in the previous 3 Holy Grail wars, such a situation had never happened. 15 servants? What is going on? The Holy Grail hasn't descended yet, so how do you know there will be such a detailed number of 8 servants? Tousaka Tokiomi couldn't help but ask. "I don't know the details either. The supervisor of the Magic Association, the Bryce-san family, informed me." The voice of his collaborator, Father Kotamin Rizai, came from the brass speaker next to Tousaka Tokiomi. "But we can also confirm that there is something wrong with the spirit veins. The great source of magic power in the spirit veins is being extracted in large quantities. Judging from the current situation, it may be related to the floating grand temple on the sea. Which Egyptian pharaoh is the one who can build a temple of that level? The radiant composite grand temple, which looks no different from the pyramids, is something that Tousaka Tokiomi would recognize even if he is stupid. Could it be that the master of the Grand Temple summoned multiple servants? Are those servants under the control of the master of the Grand Temple? Tousaka Tokiomi made the worst guess. It is very likely that it is impossible for modern magicians to do such a thing. Only the heroic spirits and magicians of the Age of Gods can do it. Kotamin Riz's voice came through the brass speaker like a phonograph. Then how did the Bryce-san family know that there were 8 extra servants? Maybe the Bryce-san family commanded a 7th master, and the servant who built the Great Temple was the 7th servant. Tousaka Tokiomi clenched the jeweled cane. Now, the identity of the master has been basically confirmed. The Innsburn family, the Matu family, and my Tasaka family. Then there are the places reserved by compromising with the Magic Association and the Cathedral Church. Kairai, Kanathelmeloi Archipelago, and Ryder's master, that third-rate magician Weber Velvet. As for the last one, there is no news yet. Hearing his words, Kotamin Riz was silent for a moment. Could Ryder's master be the magician of the Bryce-san family? Can't be sure, but the possibility is not small. Tasaka Tokiomi sighed. This is the only way to explain why they came up with such detailed information about 8. Then, is it possible that the Bryce-san family has detected all the servants that appeared? Kotamin Riz raised this possibility. How is this possible? Tousaka Tokiomi sighed. I have deployed a large number of familiars throughout Fuiuki City, but so far, no more servants have been found. What he meant was that he had made so many arrangements but still couldn't find any. No matter how powerful the magicians of the Bryce-san family were, they had no roots in Fuiuki City, and it was impossible for them to discover everything as a bystander. Chapter 397, Shabi is Shabi. Let Kairai send assassin to investigate the supervisor of the Bryce-san family and see if he can find out what's going on. In the end, Tousaka Tokiomi and Kotamin Kairai agreed on a decision. That's right, no matter who it is, No one can find out about assassin. He had Kyrie tested, and even his own well-prepared workshop was useless in front of assassin. Modern magicians are no longer a problem for assassin. It was getting dark. Qin Ren was leisurely preparing the script. With a professional, compared to him, the professional script seemed more dramatic. "Oh, Izir, you are such a genius." An orange-haired man who looked to be in his 30s or 40s, dressed in medieval British style, paced back and forth in the middle of the living room, opened his arms to Qin Ren who was sitting on the sofa leisurely drinking coffee, and shouted to the sky, "But it's not mature enough, the drama here is not enough, and the expected betrayal is not a betrayal at all." "Oh, then William, how do you think this script should be revised?" Qin Ren asked the newly summoned servant for advice on the script very seriously. "William, that is, William Shakespeare." Qin Ren thought about various servants related to Joan of Arc and the Marshal, but it seems that the best candidate is Shakespeare. Shakespeare, Joan of Arc and the Marshal are certainly not from the same era, but they are related. Joan of Arc is French. In the Renaissance era when Shakespeare lived, the national sentiment of the whole of Britain was high. What would France, as a hostile country, become under the pen of the British? In Shakespeare's writings, especially in Henry V, Joan of Arc is a witch who can sleep with anyone, not to mention that he also wrote that Joan of Arc was pregnant. In his works, when Joan of Arc was burned at the stake, she was already pregnant, and it was suspected that the child was the child of Charles VII or several other generals. That is, Joan of Arc had an affair with several generals. Of course, Shakespeare was not the first to write this way. At that time, in the literature of Britain, as long as the works mentioned Joan of Arc, 9 out of 10 would say this. However, the so-called shooting the bird that sticks out gets shot, Shakespeare is the most famous. Of course, Shakespeare's most powerful is not these, but his various works. In setting up various dramatic plots, Qin Ren thought that he was certainly not as good as Shakespeare. However, although he asked Shakespeare very seriously, McNally on the side was very disgusted. "Mr. Izir, why can such a man become a hero?" McNally found it difficult to understand. At that time, Mr. Izir asked her to support the troop established by this man, and he had no idea why, and was still wondering why Mr. Izir would make such a friend. Now, she was even more depressed. Why could such a person become a heroic spirit? "Respected Mrs. Bryson, I also feel deeply guilty. A person like me is not worthy of being called a hero. I am just a creator." After Shakespeare sighed exaggeratedly, he paused, as if brewing his emotions. Then, he said a little embarrassedly, "We should have paid you the rent for the last time our troupe rented the venue." "I don't remember." Minely raised her eyebrows. "I should have." "How are you going to pay the interest for these hundreds of years?" "Oh, he is desperately pursuing the admirer who can't find his goal. Shakespeare, can't bear to see his distress." Shakespeare turned his head and looked at Qin Ren with a serious expression. "Master, let's continue to talk about the arrangement of Mr. Matu's play. I think it can be set up like this." Shakespeare seemed to have an inspiration. He took out a blank book from somewhere, picked up a feather pen and quickly arranged the letters. "Add a little plot. The Miss A, whom he loves, is attacked and seriously injured by her husband, and Mr. Matu becomes furious and launches an unreasonable charge towards her husband. Then he is scolded and spat upon by Miss A. Oh. The outline of the script has been taken shape. Just add the details slowly." "Details?" Qin Ren's mouth twitched after listening to his words. "Why do you, Shakespeare, like to write tragedies so much?" Remembering the plot in the original work, Qin Ren raised his eyebrows. "William, maybe it can be like this. Her husband's most trusted disciple betrayed him, saved the dying Mr. Matu, then healed him, and worked with him to defeat another pair of servants. Without Mr. Matu's knowledge, the disciple killed the master, and then placed the corpse in the church, inducing Mr. Matu to go to the church and touch the corpse. At the same time, Miss A appeared and saw with her own eyes that Mr. Matu killed her husband." Oh, great, Izir." Shakespeare shouted the name of this friend with whom he did not have much contact. "No, master." "What a wonderful coincidence." With the previous conflict, Miss A would regard Mr. Matu as the murderer. Then, Mr. Matu fell into madness and strangled Miss A to death? Qin Ren continued his copying behavior. The one who is to be saved is spurned. The one who is in love has his faith shattered. The one who wants to save cannot be saved. He sinks into fantasy and sorrow and pain, and drowns in the delusion of successful rescue. Oh, wonderful, wonderful, incomparable! Shakespeare shouted. What a wonderful play! This is love. Yes, that's right, the warrior of love. Qin Ren complained in his heart. Listening to Shakespeare's praise, Qin Ren finally understood how good it felt to show off the copied book in front of the ignorant and then be praised. If the praisers were as exaggerated as Shakespeare, he would be proud. Long live the plagiarism school! Shakespeare began to write furiously, and the feather pen left a series of sloppy and continuous handwriting on the blank book. At this moment, Qin Ren seemed to feel something and turned his eyes to the direction of Fuiuki Church. Then, a smile appeared on his lips, and his eyes turned to Shakespeare. Hey, William, are you interested in listening to kings and emperors from different eras debating the kingly way at a banquet? Oh, kings from different eras? That's really good material. I can't wait. Shakespeare's eyes flashed. This is much more interesting than the lost myth script of the sandbar that you asked me to write back then. Are you saying that the myths I created are boring? There should be a limit to being outspoken. Shakespeare. Qin Ren couldn't help but be speechless. But it doesn't matter. He didn't expect that the king's banquet would come today. It's just right. Let the berserker go to the king's banquet. The chief is a Persian emperor after all. Although he has lost his rationality, he should still be able to attend. Chapter 398 Banquet of Kings, Fuiuki Church. Inside the church, Waver was standing behind the tall rider. He never expected that what he had originally sent to listen to the details of the situation from the supervisor of the Holy Church would turn into a confrontation between several servants. Lancer. His sight fell on a female knight wearing a black armor and with an indifferent face, and Waver couldn't help swallowing his saliva. It was not because of her curvy figure, nor because the thighs exposed from under the black skirt armor were too tempting. It was, next to this mature-looking and curvy female knight in black armor, there was another short blonde girl wearing a silver-blue skirt armor, with a figure like a girl. Lancer and Saber. King of the Wild Hunt, King Arthur. Two sides of the same heroic spirit. Iskander touched his chin and observed the differences between the two. Are they sides of different ages? Hearing his words, the silver-haired woman, who seemed to have faded, still looked at the two with indifference. It's too troublesome to explain. Just treat us as different people. The voice was steady, indifferent, and there was also a sense of coldness. Yes, Saber Artoria looked at her other self with a complicated look. We are different, but I really didn't expect it. The legendary king of Britain turned out to be a woman. It was just a guess before, and now that the identity has been finally confirmed, Iskander couldn't help but marvel. Then how about trying the sword of this woman? King of Conquerors. Saber Artoria frowned slightly, and the invisible longsword in her hand was slightly raised, and she took a stance. The fighting spirit emanating from her showed that she was serious, but completely different from her reaction. Lancer Artoria didn't react at all, as if she didn't care. The King of Conquerors. At this moment, on the other side, a brown-haired young man wearing a black coat and exposing his chest and abdomen said, although the future without you's rule is incomplete, no matter what, the king is the king. Even if he is not a real pharaoh, he is the king of the earth with the power of the wind god Shu and the god of war Set. Ramses II's eyes fell on the black-armored female knight. It was the breath of storm and war. He was also summoned by the Qin people, so he naturally knew Lancer Artoria. He really thought so. However, he only recognized Lancer Artoria with a breath of storm, and did not recognize Artoria as Saber. And Nitocris beside him. He leaned hard on the long staff in his hand. Disrespectful. Even if you are the king of a foreign country, you can't raise your weapon in front of the two great pharaohs. Nitocris looked a little angry. Seeing her reaction, Saber Altria was a little stunned, while Iskander laughed out loud. Ha 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 ha. Compared to these, let's try this first. As he said that, Iskander, who was sitting on a church bench, wearing a white t-shirt with Grand Strategy printed on it in black trousers, patted the large wine barrel next to him. I heard that only qualified people can get the Holy Grail. and the ceremony to select that qualified person is this war in Fuyuki. But if you just watch, there is no need for bloodshed. As heroic spirits, if we can recognize each other's abilities, I don't need to say anything about the rest. Who is more qualified to be the owner of the Holy Grail? Before this barrel of wine is finished, let's see whose kingly way can convince others more. In the name of the king. Oh, Saber Altrea's expression perked up when he heard this. A contest of the king's way? Of course. Iskandar's gaze swept over the servants who had arrived at the scene. His gaze paused on Ramses II and Nitocris. He had this idea after he paused on the opinions of the Sun King and the Sky Queen, who he had met in the morning and who had casually given their real names when he asked. Kings who appeared in different eras. They competed with each other in the way of kings to see who was more qualified to obtain the Holy Grail. Conquest was his usual means, but his conquest was not just military conquest. But oh, king of conquerors, is this the place you chose for the banquet? Ramses II's gaze fell on the surroundings. Such a place is fine as a gathering place for people without light, but for the king of the earth who has received the glory of God, the style here is too dim for the pharaoh who is the successor of the gods. His expression was obviously dissatisfied. After he finished speaking, Nito nodded hurriedly. Yes, Pharaoh Iskandar, this is not a suitable place. Hearing his words, Iskandar couldn't help scratching his head. At this moment, Weber on this side asked in surprise, "Hey, Ryder, are you still the pharaoh?" "Yeah, what's the matter?" Iskandar looked at him strangely. "Among the lands conquered by this king, there is the kingdom of the Nile, which was snatched from Darius. This king also has the official coronation title of pharaoh." Weber opened his mouth. He conquered Egypt and became the owner of Egypt. It seems that it is not wrong to say that he is the pharaoh. But Iskandar watched him continue to be in a daze. After saying nothing, he shifted his gaze and looked at Ramses II. "So, Sun King, do you have any good choices for the banquet venue?" "I think the best choice is the great temple I built," Ramses II said. "As a matter of course, I allow you to enter, but this is impossible." Iskandar's eyes swept to the group of temples floating on the sea. "It doesn't matter to me, but my little master and others will not be willing to enter other people's home court." Weber also nodded hurriedly. "Entering the enemy's workshop? No. Drinking in the temple? No matter how you think about it, it's impossible." "Right." Iskandar seemed to remember something. "This morning, I saw a castle in the forest over there. Let's have a banquet there." At this moment, a dazzling golden light appeared in front of everyone. "Let's stop joking, bastard. Forget about choosing such a shabby place. But you made me rush here, and now you want me to make another trip. How do you want to apologize, bastard?" In front of the church's gate, a man wearing heavy golden armor slowly solidified. While speaking, the ruby-like snake eyes looked at Iskandar with an arrogant gaze, venting his dissatisfaction wantonly. "Ha ha ha ha. Don't say that. Come, have a drink first." Iskandar smashed the lid of the wine barrel with a punch, scooped up a cup of fragrant wine with the long-handled wine ladle next to it, and stretched it to the person who came. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 399. Who is the most powerful king? The latecomer will have to drink a glass first. Kinpaka. Iskandar handed over the wine spoon with a smile on his face. After saying this, Waver, Irisviel, who came with Saber Altria, and Kotamin Rizai, the original owner of the conquered church, all thought that the other party would be angry at Ryder's attitude, but unexpectedly, the other party simply took the spoon. However, after taking the spoon, he put the wine spoon in front of his nose, and his nose moved slightly, and then he showed a disgusted expression. "What kind of inferior wine is this? Do you think this kind of thing can be used to measure the king's capacity? Really? This is the best wine you can buy on the market." Iskandar frowned, took back the wine spoon, and then handed it to Ramses II next to him. "Sun King, what do you think?" Ramses II took the wine spoon, drank a sip, and then raised his eyebrows. "Cheap wine, but it is commendable that you dare to pass through my throat with your humble body." Ha ha ha. Sun King, you really like to beat around the bush, right? It's cool and refreshing, right? This is the best wine available on the market. Iskander laughed loudly, took back the wine spoon, then scooped another spoonful and handed it to Nito. Hey, Queen of the Sky, you try it too. Thank you, Pharaoh Iskander. Nito took the wine spoon from Iskander with a flattered attitude and took a sip. It is indeed a good wine. Then she glanced at Ramses II beside her secretly, and then straightened her expression. But this kind of wine is okay for me, but for you two great pharaohs, it is still too inferior. Taking back the wine spoon, Iskander scratched his head and looked at Saber Artoria and Lancer Artoria next to him, the Night King and the King of the Wild Hunt. He seemed to want to let the two of them evaluate it as well. However, at this moment, Gilgamesh frowned, and his ruby-red snake pupils slightly widened. I didn't expect that two shameless people would appear in one night, ignoring the existence of this king and calling themselves kings. His eyes fell on Ramses II and Nito. Disrespectful. I am the successor of Horus, the god of the sky. Nitocris. Hearing this, Nito leaned hard on his long staff, and the surging magic power surged. And this is the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, the son of Ra, the person loved by Amon, Pharaoh Osmandas. Her voice contained anger, not only because the other party despised Ra too. Even she herself felt guilty and inferior for being able to become a heroic spirit and a pharaoh, but, no matter what, she is a pharaoh, the successor of the gods and pharaohs of all generations. Hearing this, Gilgamesh was also slightly stunned. Even though the Holy Grail did not give him detailed information about various figures in world history, he still had certain knowledge when he descended as a servant. For example, the name Osmandas is as famous as the conqueror Iskander in the memory given to him by the Holy Grail. Oh, Lord of the Nile, King of the Sun? Gilgamesh's eyes were still arrogant, but he is still a bastard. I am the only one who is the real king hero in the world. Although Nitocris was very angry about his arrogant attitude, Ramses II was not angry at all, because his attitude towards everything is to look down on others equally, and he will not despise others. He is a pharaoh who is equal to the gods, and a god-king with the same status as the sun god. No matter what it is, he looks down on it equally. Oh, interesting. Even though you have heard of my glory, you still show such an attitude. King of Gold, who are you? Ramses II stared at Gilgamesh with his golden eyes shining with the sun. What kind of heroic spirit are you to be able to tie with an unlovable cat controlled by my allies? Unlovable cat? Although this name is a bit strange, everyone present immediately understood what the other party was referring to. The Sphinx that appeared at the port. Iris Violon Saber Artoria were also surprised after knowing the identities of the two, and now they were in a state of surprise again. Although they did not see the battle, after hearing Kiritsugu's retelling, they still knew how powerful the Sphinx was. However, this is not the most important point. The most important thing is, controlled by my allies. Everyone's eyes fell on Nitocris. No matter how you look at it, this ally is referring to Nitocris. Gilgamesh's dangerous gaze also fell on Nito. The arrogant words of the lowly beast at that time really angered him. Nito also noticed the gazes of the crowd and naturally understood what it meant. She shook her head. It's not me, but another ally of me and Pharaoh Osmandas, who made us descend into the world. When the Lancer Artoria heard this, her eyes froze slightly, and then she regained her composure. So it was that person. As one of the people watching the battle, she also felt that the Sphinx was a little strange, and her personality was different from that of the Sun King. The expressions of the three people also fell into Iskander's eyes. This famous strategist and conqueror in history immediately came to the conclusion that the King of the Wild Hunt, the Queen of the Sky, and Ramses II were all summoned by the same person. Sun King, your master Iskander wanted to ask something. However, at this time, everyone saw the three of them shaking their heads at the same time, and Ramses II said, "Don't test it. I don't know why my allies summoned me and other heroes. I don't know his true identity. I just had some interactions with him in my lifetime." In his lifetime, this sentence made everyone present stunned. Osmandas, Ramses II, lived from 1303 BC to 1213 BC. Someone he had some interactions with in his lifetime. Another servant. Everyone's first reaction was this: no, that person is not a servant. Lancer Artoria shook her head. Although his identity is confusing and we don't know the truth, when he appeared in front of me, he was the god King Nuada. I will not mistake that dazzling silver arm. I can't confirm it either. Nitocris showed a puzzled look. The people that Pharaoh Osmandas and I met were Horus, the king of the sky, and Ra, the king of the gods. Nuada, the famous god king of the Tuatha in Celtic mythology. At this time, a voice sounded, although I don't mind you telling me my background, at least choose a time when I'm not here. The three of you. Chapter 400, Sand Palace. Under the gaze of everyone, Qin Ren walked in. Since this is a banquet for kings, it should be okay for me to take a bottle of wine. Looking at the servants present, Qin Ren walked past Gilgamesh leisurely. Sorry, excuse me. Shakespeare also slightly turned his body, followed Qin Ren, and walked past Gilgamesh. Oh, it seems that you are not the real supervisor of the Holy Grail War. Iskander looked at the visitor, still with a confident smile on his face, and handed over the wine spoon. No, I am the supervisor of the Holy Grail War. Qin Ren took the wine spoon with a smile. But there is no rule that the king cannot be a supervisor, right? Ha ha ha. That's right. Iskander laughed loudly, and his strong muscles trembled slightly with his hearty laughter. Qin Ren turned around and looked at the servants and masters who were looking at him with different eyes. As the host, I cannot let you have a banquet in such a shabby place. This is not commensurate with the status of a king. Then, he sat back, and the surging quicksand formed a throne under him at the same time. It seemed that the whole earth was shaking. Rumble. The golden quicksand emerged from the void behind him. From the perspective of everyone, it seemed to emerge with the throne. The quicksand surged, the wind and sand whistled, and the entire church suddenly collapsed and was crushed by the quicksand. At the same time, tens of thousands of yellow sand soldiers like statues appeared. Golem? So many? Iris Veil looked at the densely packed yellow sand soldiers around her and couldn't help but take a step back and leaned against Saber. Saber also stretched out her hand to protect Iris Veil. Waver was also scared and hid beside Iskander. The servants looked at these tens of thousands of yellow sand soldiers with different expressions. Iskander's eyes were filled with excitement, as if he was eager to fight. Don't be nervous, everyone. The soil here is not suitable for building large buildings, so it needs some treatment. The original Fuiuki church was instantly transformed into an empty space. Then, under the horrified gazes of Waver, Iris Veil, Kotamin Rizai and others, countless yellow sand soldiers knelt down together, disintegrated into quicksand, and spread evenly on the ground. Other yellow sand soldiers also disintegrated and gathered together. A huge roofless palace rose from the ground, with the throne as the center, and quicksand gathered to form the ground, stone pillars, and high walls of the palace. Finally, the gathered quicksand gathered at the top to form the ceiling. One by one, light balls with lightning and flames floated in the air, providing light for the entire palace. Inherent barrier. Iris Veil looked around with horror, and her sight passed through the open palace gate hundreds of meters away and saw the scenery outside. No, that's not right. It's not an inherent barrier. This is a huge building cast out of thin air with huge magic power. However, it was because of this that she was even more shocked. After all, the inherent barrier, as the greatest magic closest to magic, is a great magic that materializes the scenery in one's mind. Once this thing is activated, the surrounding space will change into a completely different scenery. The materialization of the mental landscape, that is, the inherent barrier, replaces oneself and the world without changing the realm. The means in front of her were not some sophisticated magic, or in other words, it was simply and crudely piling up gravel with huge magic power to build a palace here. However, such an action requires much more magic power than the magic power required to make the inherent barrier descend and replace the real environment with the mental landscape. When Waver and Iris Veil, who were magicians, and other masters who were secretly observing the situation of the Fuiuki church, fell into horror, Qin Ren smiled as if he had done something small. It happened suddenly and I was not prepared. This palace is a bit small, but please forgive me. It was not a lie to think that the palace was small. Compared with the huge city he raised in the Yellow Sand world, this palace was really small, even compared to the real Forbidden City, which covers an area of 720,000 square meters and has a building area of about 150,000 square meters. This palace is less than 40,000 square meters at the top, and is only 600 meters long and wide, pitifully small. With his horizons broadened, he did think this was nothing. However, in the eyes of others, the Qin people were indeed flexing their muscles and showing off. Wow, it's so luxurious. Iskandar's eyes fell on the side. Starting from the throne where the Qin people sat, the quicksand surged and formed several thrones. Then, a stone table was raised in the central open space surrounded by the thrones. Everyone, please. The Qin people raised their hands and motioned everyone to take their seats. As he said that, he turned his head and looked at Shakespeare. Sorry, Shakespeare, this is the king's banquet. Only the king can be seated. There is no seat prepared for you. No problem, no problem. The seat is completely irrelevant. While answering loudly, Shakespeare was writing furiously, and words such as throne, palace, quicksand, and banquet appeared under his feather pen at intervals. This palace is really nice. Iskandar walked to a throne and sat down without any scruples. After looking at the Qin people who were laughing for a few seconds, Ramses II also walked towards the throne with a smile. Ha 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 ha. My ally, let me see what kind of show you have prepared. Nito Chris also immediately followed Ramses II, but she did not sit on the throne. Don't be shy, Nito. As a pharaoh, you deserve a seat. But, sitting at the same table with the great pharaoh Osmandas and pharaoh Iskandar, although she is undoubtedly a pharaoh, Nito feels that her achievements as a pharaoh are not enough to sit at the same table with these two. If you don't sit down, then you are no longer a pharaoh. Qin Ren, who knows Nito's character very well, chuckled. How can this be possible? Having been touched to the bottom line, Nito would not give in anymore and sat down directly on the throne next to Rot II. Lancer Artoria walked straight to a throne and sat down without saying anything. And Saber Artoria, the Night King, also looked at Tyra's Veil, and came to the throne next to Lancer on her side and sat down. Then, only Gilgamesh was left. Qin Ren looked at the other party, showing a hint of smile, and his voice suddenly became vicissitudes, like a dragon's roar. What's the matter, King of Rock? Do you still want to take a portion of the elixir of immortality from me? P.S. With the ability to travel through time, it feels like there can be a lot of extra plots. So, what do you think? Do you want to write about Qin Ren's encounters with various heroes when he travels through different time periods? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.